Chapter 1261 Second Tempering. Brat, just you wait. Ginseng screamed in a shrill voice. He then turned around to flee. His battle prowess could indeed let him suppress Ling Han. However, Ling Han's physique was far too terrifying, and it would be impossible for him to kill Ling Han in one strike. Moreover, Ling Han owned a peculiar flower that could affect his divine sense. Thus, he would be plunged into a severe disadvantage if he couldn't kill Ling Han in a single strike. He had lived for over 3 million years, and he had witnessed all kinds of suffering and deaths. However, it was also because of this that he cherished his life even more. He couldn't exact revenge even if he stayed and fought to the death, so why take the risk? He would return to the Blazing Inferno sect. Founder Mao was on the cusp of breaking through to the heavenly body tier. Realm spirit stones could speed up this process, but this was the entirety of their use. They weren't essential to breaking through. Anyhow, even if he failed, the Blazing Inferno sect still had many other parties searching for realm spirit stones. They couldn't have all failed, right? Ginseng fled as quickly as he could, and he slashed with his sword whenever Ling Han drew close. Even Ling Han couldn't ignore these strikes which possessed power at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. Each slash would leave a wound on his body, though these wounds were unable to cause any significant damage. In fact, if they were to battle head-on, Ginseng would be fully capable of severely wounding Ling Han. After all, he had a huge advantage in power. However, his failure to injure Ling Han with his divine flames had left a huge mental scar in his mind. He believed that Ling Han's defenses were simply impenetrable. What he failed to realize was that he would enjoy a great advantage if he stopped using his divine flames and used pure power to battle against Ling Han instead. His failure to understand this pushed him to flee frantically, not a shred of fighting spirit in his mind. One had to realize that Ling Han was only a 6-star genius. In other words, his battle prowess could only reach the early stage of the high extreme at a maximum. How could this compare to the consummate level? Of course, Ginseng was also apprehensive of his misty soul capturing flower. Otherwise, he wouldn't have ended up in such a disheveled state. Ling Han gave up his pursuit after a short while. There was no point in pursuing Ginseng any longer. He couldn't kill him anyway, and Wolffang City that strictly forbade private fights was also close. He pondered for a moment before deciding to return to Wolffang City first. He would sell his realm spirit stones as well as the pills that he had refined in his spare time. He couldn't keep these pills forever, and he was better off exchanging them for true origin stones and godly metal, items that would help elevate the level of his divine demon sword. In terms of merit points, he had killed numerous netherworld beings, many of which had been at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. As such, he had earned enough merit points to retire. Of course, one could still return to the two-realm battlefield after retiring from the army. In fact, they would have even more freedom in their movements. They wouldn't need to worry about not having enough merit points to leave, nor would they need to worry about being decapitated in public for deserting. Half a day passed, and Ling Han arrived back in Wolffang City. The first thing he did was go to the military hall to redeem his merit points. He tossed out netherworld corpse after netherworld corpse, and it wasn't long before his merit points were calculated and redeemed. Moreover, these netherworld corpses were still useful as there were powerful beings who wanted to derive the cultivation techniques of the netherworld through studying these corpses. They wanted to determine the differences between cultivation techniques of the immortal realm and cultivation techniques of the netherworld. This certainly wasn't a useless investigation. In fact, it was an extremely significant research. If they could derive the cultivation techniques of the netherworld, they would be able to specifically target them in battle. At that time, cultivators from the immortal realm would be able to dominate cultivators from the netherworld when both were at the same cultivation level. More importantly, these powerful beings were investigating how to nullify the suppression of immortal realm cultivators caused by the regulations of heaven and earth in the netherworld. This was in preparation for an all-out assault in the future. The immortal realm was conducting such research, so it was extremely likely that the netherworld was also working on such projects. Ling Han felt like everything was a chaotic mess. Who was actually invading whom? From the information he had gathered, it seemed like neither side was the good guy. Both played the victim, yet neither seemed like one. He shook his head and rid his mind of these thoughts. Right now, he was still too weak, and it was impossible for him to interfere in these matters. The most important thing right now was elevating his cultivation. After receiving his merit points, he found that he still had over 4,000 remaining, even after discounting the amount he needed to retire from the army. However, 4,000 merit points still weren't enough to redeem the items that he needed at this moment. He could redeem these merit points for great amounts of mountain river tier resources, though doing so would be completely meaningless and useless. Moreover, selling items that were redeemed with merit points was strictly forbidden in Wolffang City. Those who were caught would be punished by death. Ling Han decided not to redeem his merit points first. He was free to roam around now, so he would decide what to do after killing more netherworld beings and accumulating more merit points. He headed toward the auction house in the city. One needed not only courage but also power and a strong network to open an auction house in the two-realm battlefield. The Gold Origin auction house clearly satisfied these prerequisites. According to rumors, this auction house belonged to the Jin clan, a superpowerful force. The Jin clan had been involved in business for all their generations, and they controlled an astonishing amount of resources. Together with the Treasure Forest Pavilion, they were referred to as the Twin Pride. Ling Han entered the auction house. After retrieving his realm spirit stones, he immediately caught the attention of the manager, who came out to discuss the fine details of the auction with him. Such a large realm spirit stone could be auctioned for a good price. Thus, the auction house decided not to auction these realm spirit stones first. Instead, they would spread the news of this auction as far and as wide as possible so that more elites could hurry over to participate. Of course, their target was elites who possessed higher cultivation levels. Such elites would naturally possess more wealth. Ling Han didn't mind waiting for a few more days. He retrieved the alchemical pills that he had refined, and asked the manager to auction these for him. For auctioning his realm spirit stones, the auction house would charge a selling fee of 15%. This would conceivably be an astronomical amount. Thus, the auction house decided to be generous and auction his alchemical pills free of charge. The auction of the realm spirit stones would take around 1 month to prepare. Ling Han pondered for a moment, and decided to accept the auction house's invitation to stay at their place. In the meantime, he continued to refine pills and cultivate. In about 20 days' time, the Black Tower would have accumulated enough immortal flames for him to temper his body for a second time. This appearance. How sorrowful. When nobody was around, Ling Han would revert back to his infant form. However, he was truly displeased with this appearance. Anyhow, he decided to put all of his efforts into alchemy. If he focused on cultivation, he would still need to accumulate origin power for 10,000 years just to advance one minor level. Moreover, this was on the condition that he had an unlimited supply of cultivation resources. It was clear that cultivating earnestly wouldn't be beneficial at this moment. At his current cultivation level, he could take berserk blood spirit pills anyway. Thus, ingesting pills was the way to go. Some prodigies could reach the peak stage of the Sun-Moon tier in just a few hundred or a few thousand years. It was clear that they had all ingested pills or something of the sort. Otherwise, it would be impossible to advance so quickly. Whether or not one was a prodigy was reflected through their comprehension of cultivation. If an average cultivator was given berserk blood spirit pills, it would make little difference even if they advanced to the peak stage of the low extreme after ingesting 4 pills. They would most likely fail to comprehend the regulations of heaven and earth for the medium extreme. As a result, they would die upon reaching the end of their lifespan. 20 or so days passed, and Small Tower notified Ling Han that he could temper his body in the immortal flames again. Ling Han had been waiting for this day, yet he was having second thoughts now that it had finally arrived. Just thinking about his previous experience made him scared. His body had been burned to ashes, and only a wisp of his divine sense had survived. However, in order to become stronger, Ling Han gritted his teeth and resolutely jumped into the cauldron. This tempering took 3 days and 3 nights. Ling Han was as fresh as a newborn as he stepped out of the cauldron. In fact, he was 1. However, he had only grown for 3 months, so being reverted to an infant wasn't a huge loss. The results are fairly good, Ling Han said with a nod. The toughness of my skin, flesh, and godly bones has increased slightly. More importantly, I've learned the secret technique, rising from the ashes. If I truly suffer a fatal injury now, I'll have a 1% chance of rising from the ashes. Not only will my injuries heal, but I'll even return to the peak of my power. Chapter 1262 Xie Donglai. The biggest difference between rising from the ashes and the indestructible true fluid was that indestructible true fluid could only heal wounds, while rising from the ashes could return Ling Han to the peak of his powers. Take this scenario, for example, where 2 equally matched opponents had both become heavily wounded, and were on the brink of death. However, one individual suddenly used rising from the ashes, and returned to the peak of their powers. What could their opponent do but cry? It was no wonder the immortal phoenix was a top-echelon immortal beast. Just this ability alone would terrify countless cultivators. One would have to do some serious thinking regarding whether they could withstand the relentless ability of an immortal phoenix. It was a shame that Ling Han only had a 1% success rate of activating this secret technique at this moment. This was the most impressive and most core secret technique of the immortal phoenix tribe. Thus, it was astonishing that a Sun-Moon tier cultivator like Ling Han was able to grasp even a small portion of it. Ling Han didn't exit the Black Tower. Instead, he took a berserk blood spirit pill, and digested it under the reincarnation tree. 3 days passed, and his cultivation reached the peak stage of the low extreme. If he spent 1 or 2 months to stabilize his cultivation, he could attempt to break through to the medium extreme. Of course, he would need to spend these 1 or 2 months comprehending under the reincarnation tree. Otherwise, how could he reach the doorstep of the next cultivation level? However, Ling Han didn't have the spare time to do this. The auction was almost about to begin. Anyhow, he hadn't gone out for a long time, so he was planning to go out for a stroll anyway. Rabbit and the old Ginseng were also bored out of their minds after being holed up in the Black Tower. They insisted on going out for a breather. More importantly, one of them wanted to steal spiritual herbs to eat, while the other... Well, the ladies in Wolf Fang City needed to raise their guard. Fortunately, this was the Cloud Apex planet, where demonic beasts and spirits of the 5 elements got along fairly well with humans. Otherwise, it would be likely that their venture out would be a fatal one of no return. Ling Han wandered into a tavern. He wanted to see if anything significant had happened during the past few days, and taverns were naturally the best place for gathering information. There were many loudmouths, and revealing secret news was also a good way for them to seek attention. He calmly listened to the surrounding conversations. Before long, he had already gathered a lot of information. Some people were blowing hot air, describing how they had killed this many and that many netherworld elites. However, it was obvious that they were ting just by looking at their mountain river tier cultivation. There were also some who were discussing the upcoming auction. However, the realm spirit stone's size had already been exaggerated to being as large as a bull's head. Rumors were truly flowing thick. Meanwhile, there were also some who were discussing the 2 realm prodigy gathering. Have you guys heard? It's almost time for the 2 realm prodigy gathering again. Of course I've heard. Those who can attend the 2 realm prodigy gathering are all supreme geniuses. They're prodigies who only appear once in tens of thousands of years. What do you mean tens of thousands of years? It's at least hundreds of thousands of years. Oh, that's right, are they entering the Mountain River Forest or Sun Moon Valley this time? I remember they entered the Sun Moon Valley last time. So, it should be the Mountain River Forest this time. Actually, I reckon that the Mountain River Forest is the fairest location. We can truly see the difference between prodigies of different cultivation levels. Not necessarily. Some can cultivate to a state of perfection in the mountain river tier, yet they're unable to do so in the sun-moon tier. The conversation became more and more heated, reaching the point that they almost started fighting. Ling Han was completely baffled. However, there was an elder and a youth seated at the table next to him, and the youth was equally as baffled as Ling Han. Thus, the elder was currently explaining the situation to him. The Mountain River Forest and Sun Moon Valley are both mystery realms in the two-realm battlefield. These are extremely strange places. No matter what cultivation one possesses, they'll be suppressed to the Mountain River tier upon entering the Mountain River Forest and suppressed to the Sun Moon tier upon entering the Sun Moon Valley. Even saints aren't exempt from this. Ling Han finally understood the situation. At the same time, he also breathed a sigh of relief. If the gathering were held at the Mountain River Forest, he wouldn't lose to any other person. He had cultivated to the peak stage of the pinnacle level of the Mountain River tier, and he had also reached a state of perfection for all the tiers before that. However, if the gathering were held at the Sun Moon Valley, he would be at a severe disadvantage when battling those with a higher cultivation level than him. In fact, he might even lose in one exchange. After all, he still hadn't reached the pinnacle level of the Sun Moon tier yet. Of course, there were still 3 years until the gathering, so he could continue to elevate his cultivation level. However, it would be incredibly difficult to reach the peak stage of the pinnacle level in time. These strange mystery realms were probably created by the collisions between the two realms. So what if one becomes a Genesis tier saint? They're cultivating in this heaven and earth, so they'll still be subject to the restraints of this heaven and earth, Ling Han thought to himself. Oi, 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 have you guys heard yet? A man suddenly shouted. He was asking whether the others had heard, yet his smug expression made it clear that he was thinking, none of you know, huh? This is secret news that only I know. Heard what? Many people asked. This man was dressed in a black leather outfit, and his 1-foot-long hair was tied into a ponytail. His chest was half naked, and an aura of ruggedness exuded from his body. A feeling of narcissistic glory welled up in his heart when he saw everyone's eyes turn to him. He lifted his bowl of alcohol and downed it in large gulps. 2 days ago, a grandson of great General Xie went to the Purple Moon Army. He wanted to bring someone away, yet he was kicked out of their encampment. In fact, his face was almost beaten swollen. What? Many people couldn't help but laugh. Is he crazy? He actually dared to go to the Purple Moon Army to bring someone away? Doesn't he know that the Purple Moon Divine Maiden is extremely protective? Ling Han's heart shuddered. A grandson of great General Xie? This person is definitely Xie Donglai. He knows that the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden came to the two-realm battlefield, but how does he know that she joined the Purple Moon Army? Hang on, even great General Xie can't extend his influence to the two-realm battlefield. Although there are no eternal secrets in the world, there's no way he figured out her whereabouts so quickly. Unless someone revealed this secret to him. Ling Han's mind immediately turned to Zhu Lian. She was a good friend of the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, so it was likely that she knew some of her backstory as well, including why she had come to the two-realm battlefield. Humph. Killing intent oozed from Ling Han's body. Zhu Lian was pushing the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden into a hellhole. The people sitting at the tables next to Ling Han involuntarily started to shudder. Ling Han's killing intent was far too terrifying. There was more so a wisp of heaven's might contained in this killing intent, and it caused terror to well up from the bottom of their hearts. They hurriedly stood up and went to pay their tabs. They didn't dare to stay any longer. However, those who were further away were completely unaffected. They continued to converse with eagerness and vigor. Someone couldn't help but ask, which grandson of the Xie clan was this? He. The man in black leather paused to build up suspense before saying, Xie Donglai. What? It was actually Xie Donglai? He's an extremely important member of the Xie clan's younger generation. Indeed. He's only cultivated for tens of thousands of years, yet he's already reached the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier. According to hearsay, he has a chance of breaking through to the heavenly body tier within 1,000,000 years. Sigh. It would be great if I could break through to the medium extreme of the sun-moon tier within 1,000,000 years. Otherwise, my body will stiffen, and I'll pass into the afterlife. Then kill more netherworld demons and earn more merit points. After redeeming resources with them, it definitely won't be too difficult to reach the medium extreme. Everyone nodded in agreement. In fact, many of the people here had already retired from the army long ago. However, they still stayed around this place. They were taking a gamble, one which could help them reach a higher cultivation level. Some succeeded, yet many more lost their lives trying. They would remain here forever, with no one to collect their corpses. The Venerable Trinity had most likely come across some great opportunity here, one that had helped him break through to the Eternal River tier. However, it was a pity that he had been smashed to death by Hunyo. The Purple Moon Divine Maiden is truly domineering. She's not even giving face to the Xie clan. Who doesn't know about her protective nature? She treats her soldiers as if they were her own daughters. To say nothing of Xie Donglai, the Purple Moon Divine Maiden mightn't necessarily budge even if Great General Xie makes a request himself. Indeed. Everyone nodded in agreement. Is there something wrong with me, Xie Donglai? There was a cold chuckle, and a tall and slender man suddenly appeared at the foot of the stairs. His hands were clasped behind his back, and a powerful aura that was unique to elites radiated from his body. Chapter 1263 Conflic. A hush suddenly fell over the tavern. That was Xie Donglai. Although everyone knew that the Wolf-Fang city prohibited private skirmishes, who wasn't afraid of getting on the bad side of Xie Donglai? Doing so would mean becoming an enemy of Great General Xie. Who was willing to shoulder such a terrifying consequence? If one offended the Xie clan, how many people in the world would still dare to associate themselves with them? Moreover, Xie Donglai was an elite at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, and he was more so a prodigy who had a great chance of reaching the heavenly body tier. Thus, few people dared to offend him. Xie Donglai looked around, and no one dared to meet his gaze. He was like a mighty and invincible ruler. He chuckled coldly. These lowly commoners actually dared to talk behind his back. If this weren't the Wolf-Fang city, he would definitely kill all of them. He faltered slightly. This was because a young man was still drinking leisurely as if he hadn't noticed his arrival at all. Moreover, this young man stood out like a sore thumb. The tables around him were all empty, and this was a huge contrast to the otherwise bustling scenes in the tavern. Xie Donglai strode over. As he did so, two elders followed behind him. In fact, these two elders had always been following him. It was just that they had maintained a relatively large distance just then, making it seem as if they weren't with Xie Donglai. He sat down opposite to Ling Han, and then released his consummate level aura. An overwhelming pressure surged toward Ling Han. Ling Han was unfazed, yet killing intent had already welled up in his heart. However, he didn't have the ability to kill Xie Donglai, and this wasn't a good place to fight either. Thus, he could only mull over other ways to rattle Xie Donglai. This person dared to pester his wife, so there was naturally no reason to go easy on him. "Mister, how should I address you?" Xie Donglai asked. There was a hint of astonishment in his eyes. This young man was actually unaffected by his aura. It's clear that he's only at the peak stage of the low extreme, so how is his divine sense so powerful? "Ni ba," Ling Han replied casually. Xie Donglai was clearly very intelligent, and a look of anger instantly spread across his face. This brat actually dared to mock him? He humphed and said, "Young man, is it really appropriate to offend others so readily? Idiot, you sat at my table without an invitation. If I don't deride you, whom will I deride?" He hadn't wanted to offend Xie Donglai so soon, but who told him to ask for trouble? Xie Donglai squinted his handsome eyes as killing intent oozed from his body. This young man was far too audacious. He even dared to mock him, a grandson of the Xie clan. He was unafraid of the rules in this city, and he was just about to act on his killing intent. "Young master," the two elders called softly. They had been standing by the staircase just then, yet they took a huge stride and arrived behind Xie Donglai at this moment. If one attacked someone else in the Wolffang city, they would receive a punishment equal to 10 times the damage that they dealt. Of course, one would simply be executed if they killed someone else. Their corpse wouldn't be whipped. This was a rule that had been formulated by several Eternal River tier elites. If Xie Donglai dared to break this rule, he would be punished just like everyone else. Although Great General Xie was influential, Xie Donglai wasn't important enough to receive his full support. Of course, if it were Great General Xie who killed someone in this city, perhaps the Purple Moon Divine Maiden would simply protest for a bit. She definitely wouldn't go all out to enforce the rule. Similarly, Great General Xie wouldn't go all out against several Eternal River tier elites if Xie Donglai were killed by the forces of the Wolffang city. It simply wasn't worth it. Thus, it would be best if everyone followed this rule. Xie Donglai clearly understood this reasoning as well, so he had no choice but to forcefully suppress his wild fury. Few people had dared to provoke him like this before. There were some, but the grass before their graves was already long. The heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had dared to escape their wedding, and now a young man dared to humiliate him to his face. What was the world coming to? He stood up and said, "Young man, I'll remember this." With his abilities, he could naturally tell that Ling Han was wearing a disguise at this moment. However, this didn't matter, as he could remember Ling Han's aura. It was extremely difficult for cultivators to change their aura, unless they switched to a different cultivation technique. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "You should have set off long ago. You're affecting my appetite." Xie Donglai's expression darkened, and he wanted to explode again. However, he was a supreme prodigy, after all, so he forcefully suppressed his dangerous urge. He felt like he couldn't stay here any longer. Otherwise, he would definitely explode in anger. Cultivators should have been unconstrained in paying their debts of gratitude and revenge. Holding his anger in distressed him immensely. He turned around and left. The two elders behind him glared at Ling Han for a short moment before also turning around and leaving. Conversations gradually returned to the tavern. However, after what had happened just then, the tavern was much quieter than before. The customers glanced at Ling Han as they conversed, and they all felt that this person was extremely bold and courageous. He had actually dared to provoke a member of the Xie clan. An elder shook his head, and said, "He's still young, so it's not surprising that he wasn't able to control his temper. Moreover, this is the Wolffang city, so Xie Donglai obviously didn't dare to attack him. However, is this young man going to hide in the Wolffang city forever?" The old man felt that Ling Han was far too rash. Ling Han had come here to gather information, not to eat or drink. Seeing the current situation, he decided that there was no point in staying any longer. He paid his tab and returned to the auction house. There were only 2 days until the auction began. Meanwhile, Rabbit and the old Ginseng took to this city like fish took to water. They were free and unfettered as they strolled around all day long. Ling Han wasn't worried about them, as this pair of bad friends was extremely slimy and hard to catch. Unless they were targeted by heavenly body tier elites, there was truly no way one could capture them. 2 days passed by in a flash, and Ling Han entered the lobby of the auction house with his realm spirit stones. He had already handed the alchemical pills to the auction house, but the realm spirit stones were far too valuable to hand over. Thus, he had kept them on him this entire time. He would only hand them over at the time of the auction. He found a worker and asked them to report his arrival to the manager from the Jin clan. While he was waiting, he suddenly saw a familiar face appear. It was none other than Xie Donglai. With Xie Donglai's status and wealth, it was only normal for him to attend this kind of auction. Moreover, as someone at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier, he naturally had an urgent desire to break through to the heavenly body tier or the pinnacle level of the sun-moon tier. Thus, he was hell-bent on obtaining the palm-sized realm spirit stone. You? A dark expression fell across Xie Donglai's handsome face when he saw Ling Han. He chuckled coldly, and said, the Gold Origin auction house is truly becoming more and more low-class. Even commoners like you are able to attend? Xie, are you referring to? A person from the auction house was walking beside Xie Donglai. Because of Xie Donglai's high status, the auction house also regarded him as an important customer. Thus, they sent a relatively high-ranking person to accompany him. This person was called Ginseng, and he had always yearned to climb to a higher position. Thus, Xie Donglai became someone who he wanted to become acquainted with. If he could form a relationship with the Xie clan, his status in the Jin clan would definitely climb exponentially. Xie Donglai pointed at Ling Han, and said, I detest this brat. I understand. Ginseng nodded, then turned to the two workers beside him, and said, What are you two waiting for? Hurry up and kick him out. He had never seen Ling Han before, so he didn't know that Ling Han was the patron selling the realm spirit stones. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't talk or act like this. Now, however, he had committed a huge mistake. Homonym 4, your dad. Chapter 1264 Please leave. Ling Han simply smiled, and said, I hope you won't regret this. Ginseng chuckled coldly, and said, you still dare to threaten me? How laughable. He felt that this young man was incomprehensible. Since when had a measly cultivator at the low extreme of the sun-moon tier dared to threaten him like this? He waved his hand, and said, Kick him out. Kick him out. Xie Donglai smiled coldly. This no-name commoner had dared to oppose him? He hadn't been able to dispose of him in the tavern, but he could borrow the power of the Jin clan to humiliate him now. He didn't need to lift a finger. Ling Han didn't resist, and he allowed the two auction house workers to send him out the door. He had already asked another worker to report his arrival to Jin Ming, the Jin clan's highest-ranking manager in this auction house. When Ling Han had proposed auctioning his realm spirit stones before, it was Jin Ming who had come to warmly receive him. It was clear just how highly Ling Han was regarded. Xie, please, Ginseng said. He placed himself in a very subservient position. The Jin clan was indeed very powerful. In fact, they were far more powerful than the Xie clan, reaching the extent that even the imperial family was apprehensive of them. However, the Jin clan also had far too many members. Non-direct lineage members like him had to rely on outside forces if they wanted to ascend to power. On the other hand, Xie Donglai was only a slightly important member of the Xie clan. He wasn't a powerful figure who wielded great power. Thus, gaining the support of a behemoth like the Gold Origin auction house was also very important and beneficial to him. Thus, the two of them reached a tacit agreement to cooperate with each other. It was just that Ginseng was far less confident than Xie Donglai. In their relationship, Xie Donglai commanded a position of absolute dominance. From an outsider's point of view, it was as if Ginseng was a servant and a lackey. Ginseng led Xie Donglai into a private room. He didn't leave after that, and he continued to accompany Xie Donglai. It was clear that he would do anything and everything to strengthen his relationship with him. Meanwhile, Jin Ming hurriedly ordered the worker to invite Ling Han over after hearing his report. However, when the worker returned to the lobby, he couldn't see Ling Han at all. He naturally became anxious, and he hurriedly pulled someone over to ask for Ling Han's whereabouts. Only then did he learn that Ling Han had been kicked out. He frantically ran out of the lobby, only to find Ling Han drinking tea under a pergola opposite to the auction house. He appeared especially carefree and relaxed. The worker breathed a sigh of relief. He had been terrified that Ling Han would leave in anger. If that had happened, the ensuing auction would have definitely become a huge joke. Young Master Han, the auction is almost about to begin. Why don't you follow me back in, he said carefully. Ling Han smiled faintly. However, he shook his head and said, I was kicked out by someone. Won't it be extremely humiliating if I return like this? Young Master Han, what do you mean? Cold sweat trickled down the worker's forehead. Simple. Whoever kicked me out can invite me back in. Ling Han smiled and continued, however, I was kicked out and embarrassed in front of everyone. I also lost a lot of face in the process, didn't I? I understand. The worker didn't try to persuade Ling Han any further. He knew that he was in no position to make decisions. He hurriedly ran back to Jin Ming and recounted what had happened. Pung! Jin Ming immediately slammed the table with his hand. It was clear that he was beside himself with fury. During the past month, he had done some research on Ling Han. Thus, he knew that Ling Han was a level 8 alchemist in addition to being the seller of the realm's spirit stones. He was a heavenly body tier elite, so he could naturally see through Ling Han's disguise as well. He knew that Ling Han had the body of an infant. However, he obviously wouldn't believe that this reflected Ling Han's true age. Instead, he believed that Ling Han had ingested some sort of pill that reversed his growth. This astonished him immensely. Ling Han had actually renewed his youth. Such an extraordinary pill was unheard of. Anyhow, just Ling Han's identity as a level 8 alchemist alone was enough to command Jin Ming's respect. The fact that he was able to become a level 8 alchemist at such a young age meant that his future was limitless. Yet, Jin Xian had actually dared to kick such a respectable customer out of the auction house. He truly wanted to slap Jin Xian at this moment. Jin Xian was trying to acquaint himself with the rich and the powerful, yet he had kicked out the truly rich and powerful. Fool! Jin Ming exclaimed with a humph. No wonder Jin Xian was unable to run his own auction house even after so many years in the industry. How could he run an auction house with his subservient attitude toward those in power? People like him would only waste the Jin clan's resources to sate their own greed. The worker remained as silent as a ghost. He didn't dare to speak at this moment. Where's Jin Xian? Jin Ming asked. He's in the Earth number 7 private room, the worker hurriedly replied. He had naturally checked this before coming to report to Jin Ming. Jin Ming stood up and walked toward the Earth number 7 private room. Pung! He didn't knock when he arrived. Instead, he barged straight in. Who are Lord Jin Ming? Jin Xian was just about to scold the intruder, yet he hurriedly adjusted his attitude upon realizing that this was the clan's highest-ranking manager in this auction house. Although he was also a member of the Jin clan, his status was far inferior to Jin Ming's. Moreover, Jin Ming was a heavenly body tier elite, while he was only a sun-moon tier cultivator. The gulf in their abilities was massive. Follow me. Jin Ming said solemnly. He didn't want to scold Jin Xian before outsiders. That would only succeed in embarrassing the entire Jin clan. Jin Xian was completely baffled. What on earth is going on? Senior Jin Ming, what's wrong? Xie Donglai asked. His relationship with Jin Xian was in a honeymoon period, so he naturally wouldn't sit by idly as Jin Xian was taken away. Thus, he immediately questioned Jin Ming on the situation. In fact, he was asking this for Jin Xian. Jin Ming glanced over and calmly replied, "This is a private matter of our clan. Xie, please keep out of this." He was a heavenly body tier elite, and the Jin clan was more so a force that could rival the Imperial Empire. Thus, he naturally wasn't afraid of Xie Donglai. If he hadn't been a businessman, he would have completely ignored Xie Donglai. After all, it was common knowledge that heavenly body tier elites were transcendent above sun-moon tier cultivators. Xie Donglai's expression involuntarily changed. Jin Ming wasn't giving the Xie clan any face? If Jin Ming were someone else, he would definitely flare up in rage. However, the person before him was a heavenly body tier elite, so what right did he have to be dissatisfied? You're still not following me? Jin Ming said coldly. Jin Xian didn't dare to sit around any longer. Even Xie Donglai's attempt to intervene had been useless, so how would he dare to raise any more questions? He obediently followed Jin Ming down the stairs and outside the auction house. Lord Jin Ming, where are we heading? He asked carefully. Jin Ming didn't answer his question. He simply walked to the tea house opposite to the auction house. Under a pergola sat Ling Han. Jin Xian faltered upon seeing Ling Han. Could it be because of this brat? Impossible, he immediately thought to himself. He had researched everyone attending this auction, and in terms of background, no one could surpass Xie Donglai. Thus, seeing the conflict between this person and Xie Donglai, he had naturally chosen to side with Xie Donglai. Such a decision was also in line with his clan's benefits. However, what was going on now? Young Master Ling. Jin Ming smiled as he cupped his hands and greeted Ling Han. Although Ling Han's status was inferior to a heavenly body tier elites, Jin Ming decided to treat him as an equal because of his astonishing youth. Fuck. Jin Xian was completely stunned upon seeing this. His expression was as if he had just swallowed 100 flies. Chapter 1265 Apologize. Young Master Han. Jin Ming actually referred to the youth as Young Master Han. One had to realize that even if Xie Donglai walked over, Jin Ming would only refer to him as Heir Xie. He wouldn't pay much attention to him. However, he had actually clasped his hands in salute and referred to this youth as Young Master Han. What level of respect was this? Little did he know that it hadn't been necessary for Jin Ming to be so respectful before. However, who told him to kick Ling Han out of the auction house? Now that they needed to invite him back, they naturally needed to show him more respect. Jin Xian couldn't help but feel shocked. He had scoffed when Ling Han had asked whether or not he would regret this, yet he was truly experiencing regret now. Who on earth is this young man? Why does Jin Ming hold him in such high regard? Lord Jin. Ling Han immediately stood up and greeted Jin Ming. Jin Ming was a heavenly body tier, so it would be far too arrogant of him if he remained sitting. Jin Ming nodded, and said, I'm truly sorry about not managing my subordinates well. I've troubled young Master Han greatly. Hee hee. Ling Han simply chuckled in reply. He then looked at Jin Xian, and asked, This is? The corners of Jin Xian's mouth involuntarily twitched. I kicked you out just then, so how could you have forgotten me already? You're clearly mocking me. If Jin Ming weren't beside him, perhaps he would rush over to slap Ling Han already. He had cultivated for over 2 million years already, and he had already reached the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. Thus, suppressing a measly cultivator at the low extreme would naturally be a piece of cake. Now, however, he could only wear a dark expression and listen to Jin Ming's commands. Jin Xian, hurry up and apologize to young Master Han. Jin Ming said solemnly. It's come. Just as I expected. Jin Xian was unwilling to yield, and he asked, Lord Jin Ming, dare I ask, what did I do wrong? If he apologized just like that, what face would he have? Oh, so Ling Han wanted face, but he didn't. Although Jin Ming enjoyed a higher status than him, he was still a member of the Jin clan. Thus, he could ignore commands that were unreasonable. If this situation escalated to the law enforcement hall of the Jin clan, they could decide at that time who was in the right. Humph. Jin Ming chuckled coldly. He genuinely wanted to smack this fool to death. Jin Xian was a talentless hack, and all he could do was skirmish for power and status. His outlook was narrow, and he didn't have any sense for the bigger picture. Jin Ming paused for a moment before saying, Young Master Han is the seller of the realm spirit stones. Huh? Jin Xian's heart shuddered. Only now did he understand why Jin Ming held Ling Han in such high regard. As it turned out, he was a huge patron of the auction house. It could be said that this auction was only so popular and high-class because of the palm-sized realm spirit stone. The size of realm spirit stones couldn't be understated. The larger a realm spirit stone, the more complete the regulations within it, and the easier they would be to comprehend. Thus, even if there were 10 realm spirit stones that added up to the size of the palm-sized realm spirit stone, the sum of their prices would still be far below that of the palm-sized realm spirit stone. However, this didn't change the fact that Ling Han was merely the seller of the realm spirit stone. Was there any need to treat him with such respect? He had only obtained such a large realm spirit stone due to a stroke of luck. Did Jin Ming really need to treat him as an equal? Are you going to apologize or not? Jin Ming started to become impatient. In fact, he felt a growing urge to shoo Jin Xian back to the clan residence. Having a fool like Jin Xian beside him was hurting him more than it was helping him. There was embarrassment and anger on Jin Xian's face. However, he eventually gave in, and said, "Sorry for offending you just then. Please forgive me, young Master Han." If he angered Ling Han and caused him to cancel the auction of the Realm Spirit Stone, the Jin clan would undoubtedly become a huge laughing stock. As one of the lead culprits, he definitely wouldn't be able to escape punishment from the clan. With this in mind, he decided to cave in and apologize. However, Ling Han shook his head, and said, "I don't know you." Jin Xian was infuriated. The meaning of Ling Han's reply was very simply didn't accept his apology. "You're merely a cultivator at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, so what are you acting so high and mighty for?" Jin Xian, if a level 8 alchemist were kicked out of the auction house by you, how do you think you should apologize and pacify them? Jin Ming asked in a grave voice. Jin Xian faltered upon hearing this. What does Jin Ming mean? Is he trying to say that Ling Han is a level 8 alchemist? What a joke. How old is he? He's definitely less than 1,000 years old. Perhaps he's a cultivation prodigy, but there's no way he's an alchemy grandmaster. How does one increase their level in alchemy? They have to refine cauldron after cauldron of alchemical pilsets, a build-up of experience over time. It's not like cultivation, where one can become fortunate and advance rapidly after ingesting a pill. Perhaps one can even jump from a mere mortal to the heavenly body tier. A level 8 alchemist who's not even 1,000 yet? Keep joking. Do you think I'm joking? Jin Ming asked with a cold chuckle. If Ling Han weren't a level 8 alchemist, would he treat him with so much respect? So what if he was a big seller and a valued patron? There was an insurmountable gulf between heavenly body tier elites and sun-moon tier cultivators. Jin Xian's heart shuddered. Jin Ming joking about this would be the true joke. Is Ling Han genuinely a level 8 alchemist? His expression changed drastically. He had kicked a level 8 alchemist out of the auction house. If news of this got out, he would truly lose a layer of his skin. Alchemists enjoyed a transcendent status. Moreover, alchemists were a relatively tight bunch. If one offended an alchemist, especially for no apparent reason, they would draw the ire of the entire alchemist community. It would be a massive blow if no alchemist was willing to auction their alchemical pills at the Gold Origin auction house anymore. As the catalyst for this disaster, he would definitely suffer severe punishment from the clan. Fear crept into his heart as these thoughts flashed through his mind. His knees buckled, and he kneeled before Ling Han, saying, "Young Master Han, I'm a blind fool, and everything was my fault. I beg for your forgiveness." He continued to kowtow as he spoke, tears and snot flowing down his face. Jin Ming almost smacked him to death in anger. He had indeed told Jin Xian to apologize, but not like this. By kneeling down and kowtowing, he wasn't simply humiliating himself. He was losing face for the entire Jin clan. This idiot. What an absolute fool. I definitely can't leave him here. Oh, so it's you. Ling Han clapped his hands together as if he had suddenly recalled who Jin Xian was. Jin Xian wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. It appeared like he had averted a huge disaster. As long as Ling Han calmed down and the auction went forward smoothly, they could pretend that none of this had ever happened. At most, he would just apologize and flatter Ling Han a bit more. Little did he know that Jin Ming had already sentenced him to death. Before long, he would be kicked back to the clan. Along with a few comments from Jin Ming, there would be zero hope of him succeeding in the future. He could only live out the remainder of his life as an also-ran. Jin Ming smiled at Ling Han and said, "Young Master Han, please." He was already past the stage of becoming angry. "Lord Jin, please." Ling Han was also very polite. The two of them walked side by side as they returned to auction house. However, Ling Han purposefully lagged half a step behind to show his respect to Jin Ming, a heavenly body tier elite. This pleased Jin Ming immensely. This young man wasn't complacent because of his skills, and he wouldn't overstep the limits either. Meanwhile, Jin Xian tagged behind them. He still had to talk to Ling Han and flatter him a bit. In his eyes, Ling Han's value had soared to a new height, what with his identity as a level 8 alchemist and all. Chapter 1266 Two-Faced. Jin Xian was a powerful figure, after all, so he returned with the Realm Spirit Stone first upon seeing that Ling Han had already forgiven them. Meanwhile, Jin Xian accompanied Ling Han like an obsequious underling. He would take this opportunity to flatter him. He was a level 8 alchemist. This was extremely impressive. Meanwhile, Ling Han had a much more thorough understanding of the situation than Jin Xian. Jin Ming evidently detested Jin Xian already, and it was obvious that he wouldn't remain here much longer. Thus, Ling Han couldn't be bothered dealing with him either. He merely gave half-hearted answers to his flattery. "Young Master Han, please." There was an obsequious smile on Jin Xian's face as he invited Ling Han to an Earth-level private room on the 3rd floor. In the Gold Origin auction house, private rooms were divided into two categories: Heaven level and Earth level. Generally speaking, the Heaven level private rooms were always empty. This was because only Eternal River tier elites had the right to use them. That was right, Eternal River tier elites, not their descendants, nor their successors. Meanwhile, Earth-level private rooms could be used by many more people. Heavenly Body tier elites, descendants of Eternal River tier elites, or people with much success in alchemy and tool refinement could all use these rooms. Thus, there were only a measly few Heaven-level private rooms, while there were 2 entire floors of Earth-level private rooms. However, since there were 2 floors of such rooms, there would clearly be a difference between them. The rooms on the higher floor were obviously a tad better. Right now, Jin Xian was leading Ling Han to one of these better Earth-level private rooms. He was expressing his respect to Ling Han, just as he had expressed his respect to Xie Donglai. Creak. The door of a private room creaked open, and a handsome young man walked out. He was none other than Xie Donglai. An astonished look appeared on his face when he saw Jin Xian walking over with Ling Han. He was especially confused when he saw that Jin Xian was walking half a step behind, an obsequious smile on his face. He couldn't make head nor tail of the situation. What in the world is going on? Wasn't this person shoot out? Why has he returned? Also, it looks like Jin Xian personally invited him back. Gasp. This two-faced brat. He was still calling me brother and talking about how we should look after each other just then, yet he's turned around and betrayed me straight away. What a shameless person. There was a dark expression on Xie Donglai's face. He humphed and said, "Brother Jin, I need an explanation." Jin Xian was caught in an awkward position. He didn't want to offend Xie Donglai. However, there was animosity between Ling Han and Xie Donglai, and he could only choose to side with one of them. If he tried to please both of them, he would only end up pleasing neither. He gritted his teeth as he reached a decision. Xie Donglai had caught him with Ling Han already, so he might as well offend him all the way. "Heh, what is there to explain?" he asked. "Am I acquainted with Heir Xie in any way?" "Heir Xie?" Xie Donglai involuntarily raised his brows. "He's drawn the line between us so soon." "Very well. Very well." He was both infuriated and curious. Jin Xian definitely wouldn't jeopardize their relationship for nothing. People like him would only betray others if there were benefits to be gained. By the looks of it, Ling Han probably had an influential background. However, what was his background? It was actually more impressive than his identity as Great General Xie's descendant. His expression became solemn as he looked at Ling Han. As an important junior of the Xie clan, he wasn't only a talented cultivator. He was also extremely intelligent and skilled at conducting himself. "Sir, who in the world are you?" he asked. Jin Xian immediately interrupted, saying, "He's Ling Han, young Master Han." Young Master Han is a level 8 alchemist. In regards to the Realm Spirit Stone, Ling Han was merely the seller. Thus, this wouldn't elevate his status. However, his identity as a level 8 alchemist was completely different. This was incredible. Oh. Xie Donglai's expression changed slightly. This person had become a level 8 alchemist at such a young age? Alchemists enjoyed a transcendent status, and they were held in higher regard than cultivators at an equivalent level. He was a cultivation prodigy, though, so he didn't need to pay too much heed to alchemists at an equivalent level. However, Ling Han was an alchemy prodigy as well, and such kinds of prodigies were even rarer. Thus, he would naturally be held in even higher regard. There was no shortage of cultivation prodigies in the world. They would appear quite frequently. However, alchemy and tool refinement were different. One needed to accumulate numerous years of experience before they could level up. As such, it was extremely difficult for prodigies to appear in such fields. No wonder Jin Xian betrayed me to follow him. However, doesn't he know that I'm more than just a cultivation prodigy? Doesn't he know that I'm Great General Xie's descendant? I have the support of an Eternal River tier elite. Anyhow, why does the name Ling Han sound so familiar? "Oh, so you're an alchemist," Xie Donglai said with a cold chuckle. However, as arrogant as he was, he still didn't dare to mock him. The alchemist community wielded huge power, and he would probably be scolded by his clan if he dared to offend them for no good reason. In fact, he might even be banished. "Good dogs don't block the path," Ling Han said calmly. Xie Donglai was stunned. "You actually dared to call me a dog?" However, he was indeed standing in the middle of the path and obstructing Ling Han and Jin Xian. Ling Han wasn't wrong in this aspect, but the phrase that he used was quite over the top. "Grandmaster Ling, you're also here for the Realm Spirit Stone, am I correct?" Xie Donglai decided to change the topic. The question of Ling Han's identity as an alchemist was quite sensitive, and it was best not to get into a commotion with him in public. Instead, he would secretly kill him when no one was around. That would put things right once and for all. He was a level 8 alchemist, and he had hurried over to attend this auction. Thus, there was a 99% chance that he was here for the palm-sized Realm Spirit Stone. That was a precious treasure that could help one comprehend Tao. In terms of wealth, this young level 8 alchemist was definitely no match for him. Ling Han smiled faintly, and asked, "So what?" With me present, it's best that you give up now," Xie Donglai said arrogantly. "Once I bid, the Realm Spirit Stone will be as good as mine." Right now, he could only attack Ling Han in such kind of way. Pooh! Jin Xian almost burst into laughter. However, he hurriedly covered his mouth with his hands. "You still don't know, do you? The seller of that Realm Spirit Stone is none other than Ling Han. The harder you fight for it, the more money you're gifting him." He had seen rich fools in the past, but he had never seen such a smug one before. Xie Donglai was feeling far too good about himself. Ling Han remained calm, and said, "Not necessarily. Dum C*NT, are you sure that you possess such wealth?" Dum C*NT? Xie Donglai's face twitched when he heard this. Ling Han had called him a dog just then, and now he was calling him a C*NT. How detestable. "You can't stay in Wolf Fang City forever," he said coldly in his mind. Once you leave, it'll be the day of your death. He decided that he would triumphantly show the realm spirit stone to Ling Han once he successfully bid on it. He would rub it in the bastard's face. With this thought in mind, he stepped back into his private room to let Ling Han and Jin Xian pass. Ling Han strode past. When he passed the door, he remarked, "You know when to advance and when to retreat. I guess you can qualify as a good dog." Fuck. Xie Donglai almost drew his saber and attacked. Fortunately, the two elders in the room forcefully held him back. Otherwise, there was no way he could have contained himself. As a descendant of the Xie clan, he had already developed a habit of acting on his whim, yet he was unable to kill just a single person at this moment. This made him feel extremely stifled. "I'm definitely going to kill that brat," he said in his mind. "After that, I'll return to the imperial capital and ask Great General Xie to help me get the Heavenly Phoenix Maiden. That B***TCH actually dared to escape our marriage. Humph. Just you wait." Chapter 1267. A mysterious elite. Ling Han entered the room. Jin Xian naturally followed him, keeping up a running conversation with him all the while, trying his best to strike up a shared topic of conversation. However, in terms of cultivation level, though his cultivation level was slightly higher, his comprehension of the regulations of heaven and earth was far from as profound as Ling Han's. In the case of alchemy, he was an absolute layman. On the topic of aspirations, he was only filled with selfish desires, so how could they possibly have any common topics? There was nothing to be done. He could only talk about some matters that men would definitely be interested in, like how he had just visited a Miss Hong at the Jade Spring Pavilion a few days ago, and how skilled she was that he was still floating on clouds on the next morning. In Wolffang City, there were naturally brothels. Furthermore, the women who were working there were genuine immortals, and were in the mountain river tier at least. However, if they obviously had that kind of strength, why would they still resort to doing such things? It was a fast way to earn money. The men who were earning their livelihood here all lived dangerous lives. Hence, their hearts were all a little twisted. Underneath this great pressure, they naturally desired an outlet for their stress. And as long as one did not die in this place, the benefits they earned were extremely great. Merit points could be used to redeem a great amount of resources, and if they managed to find a realm spirit stone, they would get rich. Thus, most of the men here were generous. Selling themselves here would, firstly, be safe, and secondly, their income would be incredible. Naturally, it attracted a great many women to willingly become prost************************. If that wasn't the case, where would a woman who was merely in the mountain river tier get so many resources for cultivation? Random thoughts streamed through Ling Han's head. He deliberately distracted himself because Jin Xian truly did not have much depth to him. He was actually talking about the details of his affairs with a prost********************. He described his experience vividly and colorfully, spit flying in his excitement. Moreover, his voice was getting louder and louder, and even the separate room could not prevent his voice from being heard. Noisy. A cold humph rang out, and a hand like white jade appeared out of nowhere, delivering a slap at Jin Xian. Pa! A crisp sound was heard, and Jin Xian immediately silenced. He covered the corner of his lips, his face filled with astonishment. He had directly been shocked silent by the sudden blow. It should be known that no matter how unbecoming he was still an elite at the consummate level of the sun-moon tier, but the other person had not even appeared, yet had slapped all the teeth out of his mouth. If the other person had really been intending to kill him, it would not be difficult to kill him with a single slap. Furthermore, the person hadn't even appeared, so who could prove that she was the killer? He said she, because this palm was fair and delicate, so it should be the hand of a female. Additionally, that clear rebuke was obviously made in a female voice as well. Ling Han was stunned too. He was completely unable to grasp where this hand had come out from. This hand was naturally not a real hand, but formed from the condensed origin power of some elite. Yet she could make it so that it seemed to be right in front of them, even when they were in separate rooms, to slap out all the teeth in the mouth of an elite at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. This strength was too frightening. She had to be in the heavenly body tier at least. Ling Han secretly compared this person with Empress Luan Xing, yet could not make a fair judgment of their abilities at all. That was because they were both much, much stronger than him. Two great oceans were in front of his eyes, and both seemed boundless. How would he know which one was bigger? Additionally, this person had a very sharp control of her power. When her palm had swept past, her origin power had dispersed at just that moment, without leaving behind the slightest wave. Hence, if she wanted to kill someone, it would also be a piece of cake, and could not possibly be traced back to her either. If she was in the heavenly body tier, then she would probably have to be at least in the medium extreme to have that kind of completely suppressing power. But taking into account that this was the gold origin auction house, to still dare to move without any fear in the territory of another, her status was possibly even higher. Jin Xian had been struck silly. He had suffered such a great loss, yet actually did not seek out Jin Ming to complain. He just simply flopped in his seat as if he had lost his senses. Ling Han was also pleased with the peace and quiet, and closed his eyes for a short nap. He was thinking, is there any way to make Xie Donglai stay here forever? Not long after, the auction began. Since it was an auction, it was naturally impossible that there would only be one item up for bidding. That big realm spirit stone was merely the climax item, and would be put up for auction at the end. Aside from it, there were also a great many valuable items up for sale, like various alchemical pills, godly metal, god tools, and even cultivation techniques and martial arts techniques. The price was also exorbitant. There were a few items that garnered Ling Han's interest, but when he thought that any kind of boost was incomparable to the divine demon sword, he forced down the urge. His priority now was to improve his divine demon sword up to level 6. He was also close to breaking through to the medium extreme. If his god tool was of the same level as himself, he could use it more smoothly. The alchemical pills he supplied were also auctioned off, and they were quite desirable as well. That was because the quality of his alchemical pills were really too great. The same alchemical pill could actually bring about an additional 20%, 30%, or even 50% of its effects, so it was naturally popular with a great many people. Ling Han counted it merely the sale of these alchemical pills allowed him to earn a considerably generous profit. However, compared with the realm spirit stone later, the gap was still much, much too large. When about half the auction had commenced, that smaller realm spirit stone was first brought out for bidding. After a fierce session of bidding, this realm spirit stone was sold for the high price of 4 million true origin stones. This was extremely astonishing. Ordinarily, a realm spirit stone of this size could only be sold for around 3 million. However, it should be noted that something like the realm spirit stone had always had no lack of buyers, but no one was willing to sell. Thus, the moment it appeared, a fierce competition would begin, so it was not be surprising for a high price to appear. After a warm-up, everyone could guess that the final realm spirit stone would definitely be sold for an astonishingly high price as well. It was said that it was about the size of a human hand, and was at least 10 times bigger than this one. 10 times bigger did not simply mean that it would be 10 times more expensive. It had already been mentioned that the larger the realm spirit stone, the more complete the regulations of heaven and earth inside, and the price would at least increase by another 10 times. 300 to 400 million. This price flashed past in everyone's minds. Quite a number of people inhaled sharply. This price was really way too high. Ling Han was filled with anticipation, though. To improve the grade of the divine demon sword, he needed a huge volume of godly metal, and the purchase of the godly metal would require a great number of true origin stones. He wanted nothing more but for this realm spirit stone to be sold for 2 or 3 billion. Time slowly passed, and the auction was close to ending. Finally, that large realm spirit stone was brought out. 10 million. 20 million. Once this treasure appeared, it immediately incited a fierce bidding session. There was no need for the auctioneer to egg anyone on, and the price was already shooting up madly. Of course, this was also because the current price was too low, and was still far from reaching the bottom line in everyone's minds. The price shot up, and when it reached 200 million, more than half of the masses stopped placing bids. However, as long as there were two people who would not give up, the price naturally could still continue to increase. Ling Han was extremely pleased. His forecast price was 100 million, and now every little bit more would cause him to be overjoyed. However, when this price was reached, there were less and less bidders, and the gap from the previous bid to every subsequent bid would become smaller and smaller. Hence, after a very long time, it finally broke through the large threshold of 300 million. This was more or less the final price for this realm spirit stone. 310 million. A few rooms away, the proud voice of Xie Donglai rang out. Chapter 1268. The most idiotic 3. It had just reached 300 million, and he directly added another 10 million. This was to suppress others with his aura, and thus successfully obtain the treasure. Xie Donglai's face was filled with arrogance. Were these peasants even qualified to compete with him? He was the prince of the Xie clan, enjoying a considerable status. Furthermore, he had even led out his own troops in battle some days ago, and ransacked a few bandit lairs, obtaining an astonishing wealth from his efforts. After he had sold off some god tools and materials, the number of true origin stones he had in his possession was close to 400 million. It seemed like even the heavens were helping him. Initially, his reason for coming to the two-realm battlefield was to bring back that that had fled the marriage. He had not thought that he would actually find a palm-sized realm spirit stone. With his natural talent, if he refined this realm spirit stone, he would have 30% chance of advancing into the pinnacle level of the sun-moon tier, and had a 99% chance of breaking through into the heavenly body tier. That was right. The pinnacle level was even harder to cultivate than a major tier. A 30% chance was already quite good. He had thought thus: if he could attempt to reach the pinnacle level, he naturally would make the attempt, but if he was unable to succeed even with such a large realm spirit stone, he would put an end to those thoughts and aim directly for breakthrough to the heavenly body tier. After all, even on the Cloud Apex planet, there was an extremely limited number of elites of the heavenly body tier. After he broke through to this cultivation level, he would really be qualified to be called as an elite, and would be respected wherever he went. Of course, all this was based on the prerequisite that he could obtain the realm spirit stone. But he was confident. Was close to 400 million true origin stones not enough? 330 million. A female voice rang out. It was not loud, but was very clearly transmitted into everyone's ears. Everyone was shocked. Who was this? She was really too wealthy, wasn't she? She directly added another 20,000,000 to the bid. She was really much more generous than Xie Donglai. Yet both Ling Han and Jin Xian shook. This was the voice of the woman who had slapped Jin Xian. In the previous bidding, she had never made a move, and it was only now that she spoke for the first time. She was obviously here for the realm spirit stone. Furthermore, what was stranger was that though this voice was very clear, it was completely impossible to trace it back to its source. They had no way of distinguishing which room this voice had originated from. Xie Donglai humphed coldly, and continued bidding. 335 million. Internally, he was displeased. He thought that he had suddenly increased the bid just now, which should have completely intimidated everyone else. Why had there appeared another person that was even more generous than he? She directly added another 20,000,000. That was 20 million, and not 200 true origin stones she had added. 350 million, the woman stated calmly, sounding absolutely nonchalant. 355 million. Xie Donglai uttered through gritted teeth. A feeling of foreboding vaguely rose up inside his heart. Could it be that he would be losing? Damn it, if he did not have this realm spirit stone, then his hopes of breaking through to the pinnacle level were practically zero, and his advancement to becoming an elite of the heavenly body tier would also have to be delayed by several or even 10,000 years. No, he had to get hold of it. 370 million, the woman was still as undisturbed as previously. 390 million. Xie Donglai called out loudly, and was extremely generous for once. However, this was all his wealth, and if the other party increased the bid further, he could only raise his hands in surrender. However, he was determined to obtain it. Hence, he added, "Milady, I am the grandson of the great General Xie, so please give way to me just this once for the sake of the great General Xie. I will definitely repay you for it." This was an outright threat. If you dared compete with me further, that would be making an enemy out of the great General Xie. What a joke. I do not take even Xie Qian seriously, so who do you think you are? A cold humph was heard, and a delicate hand as fair as jade appeared, striking out at Xie Donglai. Not good. When two old servants saw this, their expressions drastically changed. They both jumped out, wanting to disperse this blow for Xie Donglai, but they had not even come close enough when a terrifying aura rolled over them. Peng, peng, both of them were sent flying. Xie Donglai paled in shock, yet he did not even have the chance to put up a defense. His face had already suffered a heavy blow. His whole body was suddenly sent flying out, and crashed down from the 3rd floor with a bang, falling right into the auction hall downstairs. Who is it that dares to make trouble in our gold origin auction house? Ginseng roared out angrily, and then charged towards the 3rd floor. Peng, peng, peng. A series of bangs rang out, but after a while, silence resumed, which was followed by Ginseng saying in a respectful tone, "Yes, yes, it's fine. Hee, as long as Milady has fun." This was heard from the 4th floor. He retreated out of the room, his waist bent, copious amounts of cold sweat dripping down from his face. 4th floor. Heaven room, which meant an elite of the Eternal River tier. No wonder, no wonder. This mysterious woman dared boast that, "I do not take even Xie Qian seriously," because she, too, was a being of that level. However, Xie Donglai felt incredibly wronged. "Since you are an elite of Eternal River tier, why didn't you boldly reveal your identity? If I had known that your voice had come from the 4th floor, I would not have dared to stand against you even if it killed me." Yet did he dare to bring her to account for it? He had really suffered this loss for nothing. Furthermore, he had to turn around and beg the other party for forgiveness. Why? That was because he actually dared to threaten an elite of the Eternal River tier. "The auction continues," Ginseng announced, not sparing another look at Xie Donglai. The auction did continue, but after the matter just now, everyone was still stunned, so how could there be anyone who would place another bid? Furthermore, this price was already overwhelmingly high, so there were not that many people that could afford to increase the bid. The mysterious woman increased the bid to 400 million, and no one else competed with her. Hence, she successfully bought the climax treasure. The auction ended, and the successful buyers went backstage to make payment and complete the transaction. Though Ling Han had not bought anything, he was the biggest seller this time round. Thus, he naturally had to go backstage as well to accept payment. Because the number involved was too large, he had to wait until the mysterious woman completed the transaction to be able to have enough true origin stones to pay. Thus, he could only wait for now, and watch from the sidelines. After a while, a fragrance spread out. After that, a woman dressed in a full suit of armor walked out. She looked to be in her early 30s, yet was still beautiful, having the bearing of a mature woman. That kind of enchantment and seduction was something that young girls could not possibly hope to imitate. She was not only mature and voluptuous, she also had an intimidating heroic air to her, like a goddess of war. However, this suit of armor was really too well fitted, completely outlining her shapely hips. That rounded angle was like a well-ripened peach, being extremely tempting. And Xie Donglai followed behind her. Like a student who had made a mistake, his head was bowed and his waist bent. The purple moon divine maiden. When they saw this woman, not one person dared to cast another look at her voluptuous figure. All of them half knelt, appearing to be extremely anxious. Only now did realization dawn on Ling Han. No wonder this woman was so forceful. As it turned out, she was the famous Purple Moon Divine Maiden, the chief general of the Purple Moon Army. What a joke that Xie Donglai actually dared compete with her, and even dared to threaten her. He was truly an idiot to the extreme. When he saw Ling Han, Xie Donglai's face involuntarily flushed dark crimson. Previously, he had boasted that he would obtain the Realm Spirit Stone, yet now, he had lost completely and utterly. Furthermore, he had even offended the Purple Moon Divine Maiden because of this, so he definitely had to seek the latter's forgiveness. Otherwise, if this matter was known to the Xie clan, then he would really be done for. The clan would definitely not prioritize a clansman that had offended an elite of Eternal River tier. And of all things, this had all been witnessed by Ling Han. How humiliating. Chapter 1269. A favor. With the appearance of the Purple Moon Divine Maiden, the masses could only step back and give way to this elite. Xie Donglai stared fixedly at Ling Han, thinking that though he had not managed to obtain the Realm Spirit Stone, the latter hadn't either. Furthermore, he had lost to an elite of the Eternal River tier, so this was an inevitable matter. After the Purple Moon Divine Maiden had completed the handing over of the funds, Ginseng personally walked towards Ling Han, handed over a spatial sack and said, "Young Master Han, this is the payment for the auction, totaling up to 365,840,000 true origin stones." Pooh! Xie Donglai immediately spluttered. Hold on, Ling Han was not a buyer, but was rather a seller? He earned over 300 million, so what did that mean? That large-sized Realm Spirit Stone was sold by Ling Han. Otherwise, how could he have possibly obtained a profit of more than 300 million? His expression changed drastically, and he felt as if he had received a heavy slap, feeling extremely horrid. As it turned out, it had been him who had been the ugly person doing all kinds of foolish things to get attention from the very beginning. He confidently declared that he would get hold of the Realm Spirit Stone to show off his wealth to Ling Han, but Ling Han was the seller of the Realm Spirit Stone. He endlessly raised the bid, but in truth, he was only paving the way for him. And for that reason, he had even offended an elite of the Eternal River tier. He was really an idiot. Xie Donglai did not reflect on himself in the slightest, and only felt that Ling Han was really too despicable. From the very beginning, the latter knew everything, yet chose not to speak a single word, causing him to embarrass himself. Damn! 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 He was a descendant of the great General Xie, and possessed the backing of Eternal River tier. Even if Ling Han was a level 8 alchemist, so what? Compared to himself, he did not even have the right to pick up his shoes for him. Ling Han put away the spatial sack without counting the amount carefully. "Young Master Han, won't you count the sum?" Ginseng asked smilingly. "I trust you, sir." Ling Han smiled as well. Ginseng nodded. Though the Gold Origin auction house had always been known for its integrity, and there had never been any incidents of deceiving their customers, a sum of close to 400 million true origin stones was still an astonishing amount. Even elites of the heavenly body tier could possibly be moved by such an exorbitant sum, so it would not be strange if they made a move. Yet Ling Han trusted him so completely, which caused him to involuntarily feel very pleased. He felt that this young man would have great prospects for the future. "You are that alchemist?" the Purple Moon Divine Maiden suddenly spoke up, asking Ling Han. "I am indeed an alchemist." Ling Han nodded. "It is said that you are already in level 8, the Purple Moon Divine Maiden asked further. "Yes." Ling Han did not speak needless words. In front of this kind of elite, it was best not to play any tricks. The Purple Moon Divine Maiden looked quite impressed, and said, "Your true age should be less than 50, right? Not only have you advanced into the peak stage of the low extreme in the Sun Moon tier in cultivation level, you have also reached level 8 in alchemy. With that kind of achievement, you could probably look down on the entire immortal realm. What? Jin Ming and Xie Donglai both turned pale in astonishment. Their first reaction was that the Purple Moon Divine Maiden must have seen wrongly. How could there possibly be such a young genius of cultivation and grandmaster of alchemy? Less than 50 years old? It was unimaginable, absolutely inconceivable. Yet would an elite of Eternal River Tier make an error of judgment? Yet Ling Han's heart clenched. Elites were elites, after all. He was young, and this was something that was known to all. But when Sun Moon Tiers looked at him, they could only judge that he was less than 1,000 years old, and Heavenly Body Tiers could only conclude that he was less than a century old. Yet the Purple Moon Divine Maiden had further limited his age to below 50. Even if there was only a difference of 50 years, a cultivator in the low extreme of the Sun Moon Tier would have a lifespan as long as 1,000,000 years. Her perceptiveness was truly scary, to be able to make such a detailed judgment. Going by this trend, you may be able to advance to become a level 15 alchemist within 1,000 years. By that time, even I would have to ask you to concoct alchemical pills for me, the Purple Moon Divine Maiden said. A level 15 alchemist? Ling Han reckoned that the Purple Moon Divine Maiden should be in the high extreme of Eternal River Tier, and that was why she needed a level 15 divine pill. Thank you for the praise, milady. However, if I reach level 15, I am willing to concoct alchemical pills for milady without any conditions, Ling Han said. Oh. The Purple Moon Divine Maiden was astonished. Concocting alchemical pills without any conditions? This was not a small promise. The higher the level of the alchemist, the higher the price one would have to pay to ask them to concoct alchemical pills, especially from level 9 onwards. The time taken to concoct alchemical pills would be longer and longer, from a few months to a few years' time. Concocting a level 15 divine pill would need around 10 years' time. That was equivalent to wasting 10 years of his life. The lifespan of 10 years of a level 15 alchemist, how valuable was that? Thus, to ask a high-level alchemist to move required a very high price. Yet Ling Han actually said that he would concoct alchemical pills for her without conditions. This was too generous. Ling Han continued, do you feel curious, milady? In truth, the reason is very simple. I have a lover who is currently in milady's Purple Moon army. I would like to ask milady to take care of her, which was why I was so generous. The Purple Moon Divine Maiden couldn't help but laugh loudly. The fact that Ling Han had been so honest, and spoke of his own motives so boldly, had instead earned her favor. She thought that this man was honest, and more importantly, was willing to make sacrifices for his woman. Young man, walk with me, she said. Yes, milady. The two of them left. Xie Donglai wanted to follow as well, yet with a casual wave of the Purple Moon Divine Maiden's hand, he had been thrown to who knew where. Young master. The two old servants hurriedly chased after that little black dot. Their mission was to protect Xie Donglai. The Purple Moon Divine Maiden was very curious about Ling Han, and asked him about the matters between himself and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. She also understood the grudge between him and Xie Donglai, and couldn't help but say, then just let your little girlfriend stay temporarily in my army. Even if Xie Qian himself came, so what? Who would be afraid of him? She spoke these words with much forcefulness, her heroic spirit boundless. Thank you, milady. Ling Han said sincerely. Before they left the Cloud Apex planet, it should be safest for the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden to stay in the Purple Moon Divine Maiden's army. After he had dealt with the 5 sects, they could return to the Great Ling Empire together, and by then, who would care who was Xie Qian? Hold on to this token. I give you special permission to enter into the Purple Moon Army once every month to meet your little girlfriend. The Purple Moon Divine Maiden tossed a metal plaque at Ling Han. Ling Han was overjoyed. Even though they could only meet once a month, the barracks of Purple Moon Army had never welcomed any male visitors, so he was really an exception. With a wave of her hand, the Purple Moon Divine Maiden's figure broke through the space, and disappeared in an instant. Heavenly body tears were capable of flight, and eternal river tear speed was naturally even more amazing. Ling Han kept the token away, and involuntarily smiled. If she saw him boldly stride into the barracks, just how astonished would the heavenly phoenix divine maiden be? However, now that he had money, he naturally would be buying godly metal without restraint. Additionally, he also had to accumulate comprehension in seclusion to break through to the medium extreme. He once again returned to the auction house, and asked the latter to purchase godly metal above level 5 on his behalf. Ling Han himself was a level 8 alchemist, and added with the fact that the Purple Moon Divine Maiden seemed to look on him quite highly, this naturally caused Jin Ming to have an even higher opinion of Ling Han. The latter agreed happily with a nod, and even had no plans to collect any payment from Ling Han. As a token of friendship, he had said. There was naturally no disadvantage to having another friend, so Ling Han naturally accepted the latter's kindness happily. He first went to meet the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and then entered into seclusion. Chapter 1270 Faceless. 2 months passed in a flash. Ling Han finished the stabilization of his cultivation level, and comprehended Tao beneath the reincarnation tree. This was of too much help. He could break through to the medium extreme, but did not begin immediately. Instead, he headed to the auction house first. Jin Ming had bought a great amount of godly metal for him, and after buying all of it, Ling Han turned from being massively rich to slightly rich. His wealth of close to 400 million true origin stones had been spent to the point where only about 300,000 remained. However, the amount of level 5 godly metal that he purchased was just about enough for the Divine Demon Sword to advance. He let the Divine Demon Sword continuously swallow godly metal, and after half a day, there was only less than 10 pounds of level 5 godly metal left, and the Divine Demon Sword had also reached a state of satiation. It merely needed to eat one more small piece of godly metal, and it would be able to complete a qualitative change from level 5 to level 6. Ling Han did not rush to take this step. Instead, he himself began to break through to the medium extreme. He wanted to let the Divine Demon Sword complete the qualitative change when he was undergoing the heavenly tribulation so that they could experience the tribulation together, which would in turn allow the Divine Demon Sword's might to become stronger. Comprehending Tao underneath the reincarnation tree, time passed quickly. After a month, Ling Han had already comprehended Tao for 30 years. With a flash, he exited the Black Tower. Hong, long, long. Immediately, dense dark clouds appeared in the skies, forming dense thunderclouds. The strange thing was there were not just blazing white lightning bolts among the thunderclouds this time, there was actually black lightning too. This was the two-realm battlefield, so it was both the immortal realm and the netherworld. Hence, this heavenly tribulation also contained the unique traits of both realms. Ling Han had long since left Wolffang City. In any case, he was accumulating comprehension in the Black Tower, so there was no need for him to worry that he would be disturbed. Furthermore, after he had gathered enough comprehension, he could exit and directly experience the tribulation. There was no need for him to worry that he would bring disaster to others. As the thunderclouds rolled, terrifying lightning blazed, forming thunderbolts even wider than mountains. They suddenly descended down onto him. Quang! The heaven and earth shook. The path of cultivation was snatching the fortune of the heavens, and was not tolerated by the heaven and earth. Hence, a tribulation had to descend to allow this energy to return to the heaven and earth. Ling Han did not mind at all. His physique was much stronger than his cultivation level, so he would be fine no matter how much the heavenly tribulation attacked him. But for the sake of tempering his physique, he still took the initiative to shatter his godly bones. Beneath the tribulation, he would be able to advance to a higher level. The Divine Demon Sword also swallowed the last piece of godly metal, and completed the qualitative boost, similarly being tempered underneath the heavenly tribulation. There were bits of scrap metal expelled from the sword's blade, and it was becoming even brighter, like a pool of water in fall, exuding a supreme divine might. This was a divine sword. Meanwhile, Ling Han was experiencing the power of the heavenly tribulation. Now its might was even greater, causing him to be able to perceive even more regulations of the heavenly tribulation, the rhythm of the great nature. Half a day later, the tribulation dispersed. Ling Han had not had enough. He had not comprehended enough yet. Never mind. When he freeloaded off of others' tribulations in future, they would all be of this grade, so there was no need to be impatient. If he couldn't manage to comprehend it with a single time, then he'd just do it a second time, and if 2 times weren't enough, he would go for 3. There would be a time when he could comprehend it fully. His divine demon sword trembled slightly, twining around Ling Han's body, and shooting out a frightening cold light. Ling Han by himself possessed extremely strong defenses and recovery abilities, and the divine demon sword had reached the pinnacle in terms of attack. If someone used the divine demon sword to attack him, then would his defenses win out, or would the divine demon sword prove to be sharper? Ling Han suddenly thought, and then immediately felt that he was purely seeking out his own torture. What was there to think about? Good sword. A compliment rang out from afar. He saw that it came from a white-robed person, whose face was covered with a white cloth. Even his hair had been wrapped inside. He did not show his eyes, nose, or mouth at all, appearing extremely bizarre. Moreover, his white robes were extremely spacious, so there was no way to discern whether he was man or woman from the figure alone. His voice even was extremely gender-neutral, so he could be a slightly feminine man, or could also be described as a more heroic woman. He stood on one leg, and there was a chain laid on his bent thigh. His right hand lightly strummed, and a tinkling melody immediately sounded, like a stream flowing over pebbles, very pleasant to hear. This person was very strong. Ling Han thought. He could not discern the exact cultivation level of this person, but had an instinctive feeling that this person was very, very strong. It was getting closer and closer to the 2-realm prodigy gathering, and prodigies from all areas were popping up like bamboo shoots after a shower. Ling Han smiled slightly, and said, "It is indeed a good sword." "Can you bear to part with it?" the white-robed person asked. "Apologies, this is not for sale." Ling Han shook his head. The white-robed person flicked his fingers. Wang, 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 the sound of the chain rang out. He paused, and said, "Then let us have a bet. If I win, you shall sell this sword to me." Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "I'm not interested." "Then how about a spar?" the white-robed person continued. He did not seem like he was about to give up any time soon. Ling Han's fighting spirit soared as well. He put away the divine demon sword, and said, "All right." The white-robed person couldn't help but become anxious, and asked, "Why did you put away the sword?" "When the time comes that I should use it, I naturally will." Ling Han said, smiling. "Sir, how should I address you?" The white-robed person hesitated for a moment, and then replied, "Faceless." "Faceless?" Just covering his face and he called himself Faceless, then shouldn't Ling Han call himself Bodiless? "I am Ling Han." Ling Han clenched his fist. His physical defenses were invincible among his peers. Thus, he was very fond of using his bare hands. The feeling of directly using his fists to pummel his opponent was very pleasant. "Watch out." Faceless strummed his chain strings. Wang, a sound wave actually took form, and became a sharp blade that slashed out towards Ling Han. Ling Han couldn't help but look shocked. This attack was extremely fierce. It actually caused him to feel a pressure from not being able to block it. This was not the other's aura, but rather that this attack was indeed that frightening. The other was in the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. No, no, no. Ling Han hurriedly used the star-plucking step. Even consummate level was not as powerful as this. It was not that he had never battled this kind of opponent. Pinnacle level. That was right, the other should have cultivated to the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier, and that was the only possible way he could have such frightening abilities. It should be known that even though Ling Han had advanced into the medium extreme, his true battle prowess was in the late stage of the high extreme. He had not even touched the boundary of the consummate level. Yet, the other had already cultivated to the pinnacle level. Whether in terms of cultivation level or battle prowess, how huge was the gap between them? This was practically a hopeless situation. Oh, right. You are only in the early stage of the medium extreme. Faceless nodded, seeming to have just realized this fact. I will suppress my cultivation level, and battle you on equal level. True enough, the aura he exuded immediately declined, yet it merely fell to the middle stage of the medium extreme because he could only seal off a complete set of sun and moon, and could not seal off half of a sun and half of a moon. He could only be in the middle stage of the medium extreme or the peak stage of the low extreme. Though Faceless was quite a fair character, he was not about to put himself at a disadvantage for the sake of being fair. Thus, in the choice of being close to Ling Han's cultivation level, he naturally chose to be stronger than Ling Han by one sub-minor level. There was no absolute fairness in this world, and this was already an extremely ideal result. Wang, Faceless once again strummed the strings of the qin. Wang, another sound wave formed, slicing towards Ling Han. This time, Ling Han did not dodge any further. Instead, he clenched his fist to greet the incoming attack. Pang! The blade formed from the sound wave was forcefully shattered by Ling Han. With a battle cry, Ling Han charged towards Faceless. Chapter 1271. Like old friends. Faceless plucked the strings of his qin even faster. Wang, wang, wang. Melody reverberated through the air, and bursts of sound waves transformed into countless weapons that shot at Ling Han. The sky was almost blotted out by the tsunami of weapons. Their cold glints intertwined, creating an extremely harrowing scene. However, Ling Han was unafraid. He had advanced one minor level, and his physique had also elevated to the toughness of level 7 godly metal. Even if he faced the attack of a consummate level cultivator head-on, he would at most spit 2 mouthfuls of blood. Moreover, his opponent had suppressed his cultivation to the middle stage of the medium extreme. Thus, even if he possessed a battle prowess of 6 stars, it would still be incredibly difficult for him to injure Ling Han's physique. Pang, pang, pang. Ling Han launched a flurry of attacks and shattered the onslaught of sound wave attacks. He drew closer and closer to Faceless. Faceless appeared slightly astonished. When battling at the same cultivation level, his opponent was actually this powerful. However, this also stirred his fighting spirit. His hands became a blur as more sound waves surged from his qin. They didn't transform into sabers, swords, axes, and spears this time, instead gathering to form into a giant human. The giant measured 30 meters in height. It was dressed in a full suit of armor, and it held a massive axe in his hand. However, upon closer inspection, this giant was actually a corpse that had already shriveled to become a skeleton. Ignis fatuus burned in its empty eyes, releasing an eerie and sinister chill. Upon appearing, the skeletal giant immediately raised its axe and charged at Ling Han. At the same time, the armor on its body started to glow, surprisingly forming streaks of divine patterns. This skeletal giant appeared incredibly realistic. It's merely formed with sound waves, so why does it feel so real? However, Ling Han was unfazed, and he met the skeletal giant's attack with his fist. Pang! His fist collided with the skeletal giant's axe, releasing a devastating shock wave that instantly surged into the surroundings, crushing the land and causing a huge amount of damage. However, this was a stretch of desolate land to begin with, so it mattered little how much they damaged the surroundings. What was astonishing was that the skeletal giant was actually able to block Ling Han's attack. Ling Han hadn't expected this. The skeletal giant was merely formed from sound waves, so how could it possess such powerful might? As expected of a king tier. Their abilities sure are astonishing. Ling Han laughed loudly as he continued to exchange blows with the skeletal giant. Streaks of divine patterns appeared on his fist and arm, and his battle prowess instantly surged to another level. He threw several more punches, and the skeletal giant was finally shattered into pieces. However, Faceless simply plucked his qin a few more times. Another skeletal giant materialized and charged at Ling Han. Again? Ling Han shook his head. He couldn't stay passive and allow Faceless to attack him at will. He activated the star-plucking step, escaping from the skeletal giant at a blinding speed before dashing at Faceless. Faceless was slightly surprised. He hadn't expected Ling Han to possess such tremendous speed. However, this didn't faze him. He extended his arm, and surprisingly drew a thin sword from his chin. He immediately thrust the sword at Ling Han. He had hidden a sword in his chin and caught Ling Han completely off guard. Ling Han had no time to adjust his attack, so he immediately took a deep breath before exhaling forcefully. Hoo! He instantly floated back like a falling leaf. Shwa! Faceless' thin sword swept past the tip of Ling Han's nose. If it were an inch closer, it would have sliced Ling Han's nose clean off. Even if it hadn't sliced his nose off, it would have still drawn blood. Meanwhile, the skeletal giant had already arrived behind Ling Han. It viciously swung its axe at his back. Faceless naturally wouldn't let this opportunity slip, and he immediately charged at Ling Han from the front. This placed immense pressure on Ling Han. Pang, pang, pang. Faceless and the skeletal giant launched a flurry of attacks at Ling Han, one from in front and one from behind. Just as I expected, he's incredibly powerful. Ling Han exclaimed in his mind. This was the first time he had become so disheveled in a battle against someone at the same cultivation level. However, although they said this was a battle at the same cultivation level, Faceless was actually one sub-minor level above him. Moreover, Faceless had only suppressed his power. His grasp and application of regulations were still at the pinnacle level. Thus, there was still a gap between their abilities, a relatively big one, at that. However, did fair battles truly exist in the world? If one possessed weaker cultivation than their opponent, who dictated that their opponent had to suppress their cultivation level? Faceless was already being extremely generous by suppressing his cultivation level. Ling Han naturally wouldn't complain either. However, since his opponent had drawn a weapon, he also wouldn't hold back anymore. He roared as he unsheathed his divine demon sword. Murderous aura instantly soared into the sky. The divine demon sword had elevated in quality and become a level 6 god tool, and thus its might had naturally soared to a new height. A wisp of heaven's might also flowed through it, and this more so induced fear into one's heart. Ling Han swung the sword. Pooh! The skeletal giant was instantly sliced into two halves. Swords might coursed through it, and the two halves of its body violently exploded into pieces. It was unable to withstand even a single attack. Brilliant sword. Faceless didn't forget to praise the divine demon sword as he slashed his own sword at Ling Han. Ding! Their swords collided, releasing a dazzling divine light. Faceless' sword was a level 8 god tool, yet it was completely unable to suppress Ling Han's divine demon sword. Faceless had nurtured his sword himself, and thus it contained his martial intent. Coupled with its 2-level advantage, its might wasn't weaker than that of the divine demon sword. However, it was still unable to gain an advantage. Ling Han's level 6 divine sword was just as powerful as Faceless' level 8 divine sword. This was simply incredible. It was no wonder that Faceless was interested in the divine demon sword. Boom! 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 Faceless was definitely one of the most powerful king tiers of the younger generation. His battle prowess was absolutely terrifying. He had grasped higher-level regulations of heaven and earth than Ling Han, while Ling Han had a freakish physique and recovery ability. Thus, the former possessed a stronger offensive ability, while the latter possessed a stronger defensive ability. As a result, neither of them could gain the upper hand. However, if this battle continued, Ling Han would definitely emerge the final victor. This was because his defensive ability was passive and something that would remain forever. Meanwhile, Faceless would be wounded if he lost concentration and accidentally allowed Ling Han to strike him. Ha ha ha. Faceless laughed loudly and pulled out of the battle. I can't defeat you if we battle at the same cultivation level. I can't defeat you either, Ling Han said. If we genuinely battle at the same cultivation level, you'll definitely defeat me, Faceless said. After all, I can only suppress my power. My grasp of regulations is still far stronger than yours. Faceless was completely honest about this. However, he paused for a moment before continuing, we were only sparring just now. If that were a life-and-death battle, it's hard to say who would have killed whom. Ling Han nodded in agreement. Could prodigies like them not have trump cards? For example, he still hadn't activated Heaven's Might yet. Moreover, even if he were severely wounded, he could still circulate a drop of indestructible true fluid and instantly recover. In fact, he even had a 1% chance of rising from the ashes. Of course, his strongest trump card was still the Black Tower. If worse came to worst, he could simply hide in the Black Tower. If he did so, even saints wouldn't be able to do anything. The two of them felt like they were old friends, even though this was the first time they had met. They decided to sit down and discuss Tao. Although Faceless possessed a higher cultivation level, Ling Han's thinking was fresh and bold. It gave him quite a lot of inspiration. Meanwhile, Ling Han also received a lot of inspiration. The reason for this was simple: Faceless possessed a higher cultivation level than him. The two of them became more and more enthusiastic, and they ended up speaking for an entire 3 days. However, they still felt unsatiated. They felt as if they could discuss Tao for another 7 or 8 days. "Heh, I've finally found you." A voice that was dripping with hatred suddenly traveled over. Ling Han and Faceless looked over, only to see Xie Donglai walking over with his 2 elderly servants behind him. There was also a middle-aged woman. Zhu Liyun, also known as Will-o'-the-Wisp. Chapter 1272 Arrival of Pursuing Troops. Killing intent flashed across Ling Han's eyes. This woman was truly selfish. After being rejected, she had chosen to push everyone else into extreme danger. He had never seen such a disgusting woman before. Moreover, did she genuinely like him? No, she was simply attracted by his identity of a level 8 alchemist, although she only believed that he was a level 4 or level 5 alchemist. It was rare for Ling Han to feel killing intent toward a stranger. However, this woman had succeeded in triggering his killing intent. With regard to this, she was quite special. A cold smile appeared on Xie Donglai's face. He nodded at Zhu Liyun and said, "He's indeed here." Zhu Liyun hurriedly put on an obsequious smile, and said, "After seeing this person visit that B*TCH, I returned to Wolffang City to gather more information. Only then did I discover that he had headed in this direction. Thankfully, I completed the task that young Master Xie gave me." In fact, they had already scoured the 2-realm battlefield for a long time. However, Ling Han had been cultivating in seclusion in the Black Tower, so how could they have found him? If it weren't for Xie Donglai's pettiness and overwhelming desire to exact revenge on Ling Han, they would have given up a long time ago. Trying to find someone in this place even with a general direction was like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Xie Donglai stared at Ling Han coldly, and said, "Ling Han, so it turns out that you're that B*TCH's lover. No wonder I thought your name sounded a bit familiar." Killing intent flashed through his eyes. He finally understood why Ling Han had opposed him the entire time. As it turned out, it was because of his relationship with the heavenly Phoenix Maiden. However, he was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. So what if he was a level 8 alchemist? If he killed everyone here, who would suspect him of being the killer? In fact, what did it matter if they suspected him? They would need evidence to convict him. Without evidence, who would dare to use force against a descendant of an eternal river tier elite? Ling Han turned to Faceless, and said, "Brother Faceless, can you hold those 3 men back for me? I want to kill that woman." Faceless didn't ask any questions, instead saying, "Are you sure you can defeat that woman? Although her strength is only SOSO, her cultivation level is far higher than yours. He could clearly determine that Ling Han's battle prowess hadn't reached the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier yet. Ling Han flashed a confident smile, and replied, "I'm positive." Faceless nodded, and said, "Fine, I'll deal with those 3 men, then." He appeared especially at ease. This was extremely normal. He was at the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier, and it was possible that he had already reached the peak stage. Meanwhile, Xie Donglai and his 2 elder servants were only at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. For them, fighting against a pinnacle-level elite would be like fighting against a heavenly body tier elite. Their advantage in numbers would be completely useless. At least, the 3 of them would stand no chance against Faceless. Perhaps they would need 10, 100, or even 1,000 cultivators to team up against him. The exact number would depend on Faceless' accomplishment at the pinnacle level. Whether he was at the early stage, middle stage, late stage, or peak stage would make a huge difference. Ling Han had full confidence in Faceless' ability. Thus, he was extremely relaxed as he strode toward Zhu Lian. He was going to kill this toxic woman first. Otherwise, he would be leaving a poisonous snake by the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's side. "You two are far too arrogant," Xie Donglai shouted. He had naturally heard Ling Han's conversation with Faceless, and it had caused him to almost explode in anger. The 2 of them were measly cultivators at the medium extreme, yet one of them dared to claim that he would fight against 3 of them, while the other claimed that he would kill Zhu Lian. Where was their confidence coming from? Where was their courage coming from? Would they die if they didn't make such bold claims? He had nothing but scorn for Ling Han and Faceless upon detecting that the aura from their bodies was only at the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. Gasp. However, this thought had barely left Xie Donglai's mind when he immediately sucked in a cold breath. How long has passed? Yet Ling Han has already advanced another level? Had he already been stuck at the peak stage of the low extreme for a long time? And he coincidentally broke through at this time? If this were the case, he could still accept it. Otherwise, wouldn't this brat be a supreme freak? One had to remember the Purple Moon Divine Maiden's claim that Ling Han's true age was definitely under 50. This was the claim of an Eternal River tier elite. Who dared to question it? He's reached the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier before 50. Killing intent surged from Xie Donglai's body. He definitely couldn't spare this love rival. He was far too fucking freakish. "Kill him," he shouted softly. He naturally didn't need to deal with Ling Han himself. His 2 elderly servants would dispose of Ling Han for him. "Understood, young master." The 2 elderly servants immediately charged at Ling Han. "Heh, I'll play with you too." Faceless dashed over to meet them. "Why are you hiding your appearance? Can you not show your face to others?" Xie Donglai mocked. Surprisingly, his insults had improved significantly after his several verbal skirmishes with Ling Han. He was far more toxic than before. Faceless expression couldn't be seen. However, he replied with a stroke of his chin. Wang. A sword instantly materialized in the air and slashed at Xie Donglai. By the looks of it, he had been angered slightly. "You dare?" The 2 elderly servants exchanged a glance, then, one of them charged toward Faceless, and the other charged toward Ling Han. Wang. Faceless stroked his chin again, and a spear materialized in the air and shot at the elderly servant who was charging toward Ling Han. Pang. The elderly servant simply threw a punch backward and shattered the spear to pieces. Meanwhile, the other elderly servant had already appeared before Faceless. Pang. He launched a strike and sent Faceless flying backward. Faceless twisted in the air before landing on the ground. He coughed upon landing, and a splotch of blood instantly appeared on his face veil. He suddenly came to a realization, and exclaimed, "Oh! I forgot to undo the suppression on my cultivation." Ling Han's expression involuntarily darkened. He hadn't expected Faceless to have such a foolish side to him. If he were killed because of such a mistake, wouldn't that be incredibly sad? Pang. He hurriedly threw a punch as these thoughts flashed through his mind. His fist collided with the elderly servant's, and he instantly slid backward. His power was far below that of the elderly servant. However, because of his powerful physique, he was able to absorb the power of the elderly servant's strike after dragging a 300-meter-long ditch along the ground. Ling Han shook his hands. His godly bones were numb due to the formidable power of the collision, and the skin on his hands had also cracked open, allowing blood to seep out. "Brother Faceless, don't screw us over." "It was an accident, Faceless hurriedly said. "Childish games." Xie Donglai chuckled coldly, and shouted, "Hurry up and kill them." Ling Han's rapid advance in cultivation terrified him. At his current speed, it was possible that he would reach the peak stage of the Sun-Moon tier within 100 years. In fact, he could break through to the heavenly body tier within 1,000 years. This was inhumane. The two elderly servants continued to attack Ling Han and Faceless. "I said I would play with both of you," Faceless said with a smile. He charged forward, and his aura instantly increased explosively. Pang! He appeared before Ling Han in a flash, and he immediately pressed his palm toward one of the elderly servants. A devastating power swept over and instantly sent the elderly servant flying. His trajectory just so happened to intersect with the pursuing elderly servant, and they violently collided with each other. The two of them instantly tumbled along the ground. Pang, 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 pang. They only came to a stop after tumbling an extremely long distance. This strike was earth-shattering, and it left Xie Donglai and the others stunned. What in the world is going on? An elite at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier had been sent flying by a single strike. Not only that, but he had even collided into another elite at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier and sent him tumbling along the ground. Fuck. Chapter 1273 Destroying Enemies. Faceless stood as firm and as upright as a mountain. His white clothes billowed gently, and an intense aura of smugness exuded from his body. However, he was indeed powerful. One could only act smug and show off if they were powerful. Otherwise, they would merely be making a fool of themselves. Astonishment finally spread across Xie Donglai's face. Faceless' aura had suddenly become profound and formidable, and it was as if he had become an untouchable god. How is this possible? He's clearly only at the medium extreme. So, how did he suddenly become so powerful? "Mister, you are?" Xie Donglai asked solemnly. He didn't dare to underestimate his opponent anymore. Faceless smiled faintly, and said, "You're not worthy of learning my name." Xie Donglai was instantly enraged. He wasn't worthy of learning his name? He was a descendant of great General Xie, and his background was more so an eternal river tier force. Yet, he wasn't worthy of learning his opponent's name? This person is even more arrogant than Ling Han. He's even more detestable. Die, 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 he roared. He had suppressed his anger for far too long in Wolffang City. Before that, he had also been kicked out of the Purple Moon Army's territory before even making it into their encampment. Right now, his pent-up anger was finally erupting. The two elderly servants retrieved their weapons as they crawled back up. They forcefully suppressed the astonishment in their minds. In the beginning, they had thought that Ling Han and Faceless were both at the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. Thus, they had naturally felt that it beneath them to use god tools. Now, however, Faceless had suddenly transformed into a formidable elite. As such, they naturally couldn't maintain the same level of composure anymore. "Brother Faceless, I'll leave them to you," Ling Han said with a smile. "No problem," Faceless replied calmly. He appeared especially relaxed. In fact, this was exactly how he felt at this moment. He was at the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier, after all, so he could crush Xie Donglai and his two elderly servants with a simple wave of his hand. Faceless? Xie Donglai had naturally heard Ling Han's exchanges with Faceless. However, he didn't believe that Faceless was genuinely his name. It was because of this that he had asked Faceless for his name. However, he had ended up being slapped across the face instead. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Meanwhile, the two elderly servants charged at Faceless together. To his surprise, they actually possessed a combination attack formation. Their steps were like yin and yang, one high, one low, one above, and one below. The power of their attacks stacked together, and its might was genuinely impressive. Faceless strummed his chin. Wang! A sound wave burst out and transformed into a spear that swept toward the two elders. Pung! The two elders were no match for this spear, and they were both sent flying by its formidable might. This. Xie Donglai trembled lightly. The combined attack of his two elderly servants was extremely powerful. When they teamed up, even he would struggle to defeat them. However, Faceless had defeated them with a simple strum of his chin. Sun Moon tier, pinnacle level, he said with a quiver in his voice. Apart from this, he couldn't think of any other possibilities. Faceless seemed indifferent, and he said, "My job is to hold you people back and have you watch on obediently. I suggest that you cooperate with me and don't make me waste my strength. I despise people who trouble me unnecessarily. When it comes to such people, I have a habit of directly killing them." Understood? Xie Donglai wore an ugly expression. He was the descendant of an Eternal River tier elite, yet he was actually being threatened like this. How could he accept this? However, Faceless had already made himself very clear. If they continued to resist, he would directly kill them. He didn't doubt Faceless' killing intent one bit. People like him looked especially gentle and amiable, but when they started to kill people, they would become shockingly ruthless. Xie Donglai and his two elderly servants didn't dare to move. However, they had the background of Great General Xie, and they also had some life-saving trump cards up their sleeves. Thus, they still had a chance to escape even if Ling Han and Faceless tried to kill them and destroy the evidence of their actions. Xie Donglai's mind whirred as he stood watching the scenes before him. He wanted to invite this supreme prodigy to his side. If he could make Faceless his subordinate, his standing in the Xie clan would definitely elevate to another level. This wasn't impossible. After all, Faceless still didn't know his true identity yet. Heh, so what if you're a supreme prodigy? Can you pass the barrier of the Eternal River tier? Brother Faceless, I'm Xie. Pooh. A burst of sword chi slashed over just as Xie Donglai started to speak. The sword chi struck his mouth and instantly shattered several of his teeth. His words were naturally stuffed back into his mouth. If you utter any more nonsense, broken teeth will be the least of your worries. Faceless said coldly. Xie Donglai was as embarrassed as he was infuriated. Since when had he ever been humiliated like this before? However, he didn't dare to voice his anger. Instead, he glared at Faceless, and promised himself that he would exact revenge in the future. He would advance to the heavenly body tier as quickly as he could and use his advantage in cultivation level to suppress him. In any case, he genuinely didn't dare to speak anymore. Meanwhile, Ling Han stood opposite to Zhu Liyun. "You want to kill me?" Zhu Liyun asked in scorn. She admitted that Ling Han was a supreme prodigy in alchemy. However, when it came to cultivation, he was only at the low extreme. Fuck, wait. He was already at the medium extreme? Zhu Liyun was stunned. Ling Han had only been at the middle stage of the low extreme when she had first met him. Only a few months had passed, yet he had already advanced to the medium extreme? This was utterly terrifying. Were alchemists all this freakish? "I don't want to kill you. I'll definitely kill you," Ling Han said gravely. He absolutely abhorred dishonest and disloyal people like her. Humph. So what if you've advanced rapidly? You're still an entire 2 minor levels below me. This is an insurmountable gulf. There was a cold sneer on Zhu Liyun's face. If Faceless were her opponent, she would definitely wet herself in fright. However, Ling Han? Heh. Is that so? Ling Han retrieved his divine demon sword. He would kill this person with his full power. Zhu Liyun also retrieved her god tool. She wouldn't relax and become careless just because her opponent's cultivation level was below hers. Conceit was a bad habit of men. In order to achieve her goals, she would go all out and use any method possible. In any case, this was a battle of life and death, so she would obviously use her full strength. As the saying went, a lion would use its full strength even when wrestling a rabbit. Ling Han didn't speak any more nonsense. Facing this kind of vile woman, there was only one thing he needed to dokel her. He lashed out with his divine demon sword, which emitted a boundless divine light and bursts of devastating sword chi. The sword chi was like soaring dragons and crackling lightning. Its might was simply formidable. A look of greed appeared in Xie Donglai's eyes when he saw this. This was an incredibly powerful sword. In fact, even he could sense a shred of its might. If he could obtain this sword, perhaps his battle prowess would elevate by a noticeable amount. However, a ruthless killer was standing right in front of him, so how would he dare to move? Anyhow, Zhu Liyun was no pushover either. This was mainly because she enjoyed a significant advantage in terms of cultivation level. This wasn't something that could be overcome with a god tool. She wielded a saber, and her strikes were bold and ferocious. Like an angry shrew shouting on the streets, her aura was vicious to the extreme. After a few exchanges, Ling Han was instantly pushed to his back foot. No one found this strange. After all, there were a whopping 11 stars between their cultivation levels. Even if Ling Han were a 10-star genius, he could only grit his teeth and accept defeat. In any case, it was impossible to become a 10-star genius unless one advanced to the pinnacle level. However, if Ling Han were at the pinnacle level, he would already possess the ability to suppress cultivators at the consummate level. Thus, this was an impossible cycle. However, Ling Han had never planned to fight a long and drawn-out battle, and he had never planned to tire his opponent to death using his freakish physique and recovery ability. Instead, he directly retrieved the misty soul-capturing flower. Zhu Liyun's eyes instantly glazed over when she saw this flower. Then, fervent excitement appeared on her face. Pooh! Sword light slashed over, and a head flew into the air. A fountain of blood sprayed into the sky. Chapter 1274 Heavenly Tribulation of the Old Ginseng. Ling Han sheathed his sword. Pung! Zhu Liyun's headless corpse collapsed to the ground in a heap. Meanwhile, her head also fell back down from the sky. However, she still wore an intoxicated expression, and it was as if she hadn't noticed the arrival of her death. Shock spread across Xie Donglai's face. Just then, he had almost been intoxicated by the misty soul-capturing flower as well. Fortunately, he had been far away enough, and he had also tempered his divine sense before. As such, his willpower was strong, and it wouldn't be that easy for him to fall victim. However, it was a completely different story for his two elderly servants. They were still confused at this moment, and it was as if they had even forgotten their own identity. What a terrifying demonic flower! However, Faceless was completely unaffected. He was simply curious, and he asked, "Brother Ling, is this the misty soul-capturing flower?" As expected of Brother Faceless. Ling Han said with a smile. This is indeed the misty soul-capturing flower. He held the misty soul-capturing flower in his left hand while he held his divine demon sword in his right. He strode towards Xie Donglai. Xie Donglai's expression changed drastically. He gritted his teeth, and a golden paper seal instantly appeared in his hand. He slapped this seal onto his chest, and a powerful golden light immediately burst into the surroundings, causing Ling Han and Faceless to involuntarily turn their heads away. This light was far too blinding. In fact, it was genuinely capable of ruining one's eyes. When they turned back around, that orb of golden light had already enveloped Xie Donglai as well as his two elderly servants and soared into the sky. In the immortal realm, only heavenly body tier elites could grasp the more profound regulations of heaven and earth and achieve the ability of flight. However, the regulations were extremely chaotic in the two-realm battlefield, so it would be even harder to maintain flight for long periods of time. Yet, the speed of the golden orb that enveloped Xie Donglai and his two elderly servants was incredibly quick. It was evident that this divine seal wasn't the work of a heavenly body tier elite. There was an eternal river tier in the Xie clan, so it was only normal that he refined some divine seals for his descendants. However, the Xie clan had so many members, and there was no way that an eternal river tier elite would spend all his time refining divine seals. Thus, these divine seals were probably still tremendously valuable in the Xie clan. Thus, Xie Donglai probably only had one such divine seal, even with his lofty standing. Such a divine seal was genuinely a lifesaver. Xie Donglai was afraid that Ling would target him with the misty soul capturing flower, and he was even more afraid that Faceless would suddenly attack him. The latter would truly plunge him into a perilous situation. To him, facing a cultivator at the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier would be no different from facing an elite at the heavenly body tier. In both cases, he would be absolutely no match for them. Ling shook his head as he put his divine demon sword and misty soul capturing flower away. In reality, the effectiveness of the misty soul capturing flower was fairly limited. At least, it was completely useless against Faceless. It was clear that the stronger one's willpower, the stronger their resistance against the misty soul capturing flower's intoxication ability. Faceless wasn't a nosy person, and he didn't ask Ling about his animosity towards Xie Donglai and Zhu Lian. Instead, he continued to discuss Dao with him. Another 7 days passed, and only then did he reluctantly bid farewell to Ling. Their discussions of Dao had benefited him immensely, and also given him a wealth of inspiration. Thus, he decided to enter seclusion for a few months or even 1 or 2 years so that he could work toward the peak stage of the pinnacle level. Ling also entered the Black Tower. 3 months had already passed, and he could temper his body in the immortal flames again. People often said that things were difficult the first time but easy the second. However, after tempering his body in the immortal flames 2 times, Ling was only left with memories of pain and suffering. If it were possible, he truly didn't want to be burned to ash again. However, in order to become stronger, he resolutely leaped into the cauldron again. 3 days passed, and Ling crawled out of the cauldron. Like before, he had transformed into a tiny infant. However, if one looked closely, they would discover that he was at least 7 months old this time. This was already a huge improvement from the first time, when he was at most 3 months old. This represented his improved understanding of the indestructible heaven scroll, especially the part that pertained rising from the ashes. If I'm killed, I've almost got a 2% chance of rising from the ashes and returning to my peak power now, Ling murmured to himself. However, this number was still too low. Out of 50 deaths, he would only be able to revive once. Such a probability was unacceptably low. However, I can ingest berserk blood spirit pills again. Rising from the ashes would help his physique become stronger. However, this effect would only start to slowly become obvious with time. Meanwhile, the effects of berserk blood spirit pills were extremely evident. Once he took and digested one, his cultivation level would immediately advance by 1 sub-minor level. Ling sat under the reincarnation tree for 3 days, digesting a berserk blood spirit pill and also comprehending Dao. He had already advanced to the middle stage of the medium extreme, but his comprehension of this cultivation level was still lacking slightly. After all, he had only comprehended Dao for 3 years. The higher one's cultivation level, the harder it would be to comprehend the Dao of heaven and earth. He cultivated in seclusion for a few more days in order to stabilize his cultivation level. Only then did he return to Wolffang City. Several months had passed, and he needed to visit the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. They had finally reunited after 10,000 years, yet they had only seen each other a limited number of times. Both he and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden missed each other immensely. He went to the Purple Moon Army, and had a lover's conversation with the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. However, when he wanted to become more lovey-dovey, he was instantly swatted away by the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Sure enough, this savage lady hasn't changed a single bit. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was easily embarrassed, and she had instinctively swatted him aside upon seeing him move in for a kiss. In the end, Ling Han wasn't able to realize his fantasy of kissing her. This savage lady. I'll punish you when I advance to the consummate level. Ling Han murmured to himself when he left the Purple Moon Army's encampment. Right now, he was genuinely no match for the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Moreover, they obviously couldn't engage in a life-and-death battle. Thus, he was absolutely helpless in front of her. Oh, isn't this little Han? Why does it look like you've swallowed 100 flies? Rabbit and the old Ginseng appeared before Ling Han, and immediately started to tease him. A menacing look appeared on Ling Han's face, and he threatened, "If you two don't shut up, I'll cook you into ginseng and rabbit meat soup." The rabbit and old Ginseng continued to joke and laugh, completely unafraid of Ling Han's threat. They had their arms around each other's shoulders, and they looked like a pair of delinquent friends. It was just that rabbit would occasionally drool when glancing at the old Ginseng. It was entirely imaginable that one of them might disappear at any moment. "Little Han, do you want Grandpa Ginseng to teach you a few techniques? I guarantee you'll be able to win over the heart of any woman," the old Ginseng said shamelessly. Ling Han chuckled in scorn. The old Ginseng's techniques most likely involved lying, cheating, deceiving, and kidnapping. The old Ginseng's expression suddenly became serious, and he said, "Oh, that's right, Grandpa Ginseng is about to break through to the Sun-Moon tier. So, I've especially come to ask you to become my guard." Ling Han shook his head upon hearing this. He had thought that they had finally discovered their conscience and come to visit him. As it turned out, they had only come looking for him because the old Ginseng needed to face heavenly tribulation. However, this was good news. He could take this opportunity to freeload some tribulation again. Fine, let's go. The three people found a relatively desolate area, and the old Ginseng immediately started to face his heavenly tribulation. He was extremely confident that he could pass the tribulation. However, his vitality would definitely fall drastically after going through heavenly tribulation. If he were targeted by someone at that time. After all, who wouldn't want to eat godly medicine? Although the immortal realm had rules stating that one could only target netherworld beings in the two-realm battlefield, who would know if someone secretly killed an ally outside of Wolffang City? The main problem was that heavenly tribulation would cause a huge commotion and attract the attention of many people in the surroundings. Boom! Thunder instantly rumbled across the sky as the old Ginseng stopped suppressing his cultivation level. Dark clouds converged above him. The old Ginseng started to face heavenly tribulation. Meanwhile, Ling Han actively jumped toward him to freeload his heavenly tribulation. He would take this opportunity to further comprehend heaven's might. "This brat is truly a freak," Rabbit exclaimed as he ran far away. He didn't want to be swept up in heavenly tribulation. After all, only freaks like Ling Han would actively provoke tribulations. Chapter 1275. The Heaven's Sword Palace has come again. The dark clouds dispersed after half a day. The old Ginseng had successfully passed his heavenly tribulation. Although his battle prowess wasn't impressive, he possessed a remarkable vitality due to his identity as a wood spirit, one of the spirits of the 5 elements. Thus, although he had been riddled with wounds after passing the tribulation just then, portions of his body had already fully healed. He was still covered in wounds, but his aura was tens of thousands of times more powerful than before. The gulf between the consummate level of the mountain river tier and the low extreme of the sun-moon tier was like the gulf between heaven and earth. Old Ginseng has reached the sun-moon tier, so he's definitely more nutritious now, Rabbit said as he drooled. It looked like he wanted to hop over and devour the old Ginseng as if he were a carrot. This wasn't any ordinary godly medicine. This was a godly medicine that had developed intelligence, absorbed the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, and cultivated to become a ginseng king. Thus, the old ginseng was definitely numerous times more nutritious than ordinary level 5 godly medicine. Ha ha ha, what great luck! There's actually a ginseng king facing its heavenly tribulation here. Spirits of the 5 elements are inherently favored by heaven and earth. Ginseng kings are more so brimming with life essence. If I ingest one, it will not only elevate my cultivation level, but even increase my lifespan by tens of thousands of years. There was long laughter, and 7 men appeared before them. They were all at the sun-moon tier, though their specific cultivation levels were quite uneven, ranging from the low extreme to the consummate level. Thus, their age also differed greatly. Some of them were middle-aged men who were brimming with energy, while some of them were old men who had completely white hair. However, the path of cultivation was extremely dependent on one's talent. As such, those who were old wouldn't necessarily possess a higher cultivation level, while those who were young wouldn't necessarily possess a lower cultivation level. Ling Han had just faced heavenly tribulation as well, and a smile involuntarily tugged at his mouth when he saw the 7 men. After having a chance encounter with members of the Heaven's Sword Palace, he had learned to observe whether people had unique insignias on their clothes. The 7 men were clearly companions, so it was extremely likely that they were all members of the same force. After a quick glance, he immediately discovered the sword that was sewn onto their sleeves. What an incredible coincidence! It was the Heaven's Sword Palace again. In fact, this coincidental encounter was completely understandable. The Heaven's Sword Palace had lost an extremely valuable treasure map here, after all, and they had already sent a team of disciples to search for it. Since these people had gone missing, the Heaven's Sword Palace naturally sent more people to search for the map. The 7 members of the Heaven's Sword Palace naturally saw Ling Han and the others as well. However, they found this group of people incredibly strange. There was a human, a demonic beast, and a wood spirit. Huh! This human. One of the middle-aged men wore a strange expression as he looked at Ling Han. He felt that this person looked slightly familiar. Ancestor Lu, is there something strange about this person? Someone asked. The middle-aged man suddenly clapped his hands and exclaimed, Ling Han. Ling Han? The other 6 men were extremely confused. They had never heard of this name before. He's the criminal who opened the sky and brought the lower realm into the immortal realm, the middle-aged man spat through gritted teeth. Anger burned in his eyes. In the immortal realm, sun-moon tier forces were utterly insignificant. The 5 sects had only obtained the lower realm by chance, and they had all viewed this small world as a precious treasure. In fact, before Ling Han's feet, they had already farmed the lower realm for 1 million years. Their harvests had been bountiful, and they would obtain several realm pills every 10,000 years. These realm pills had allowed the 5 sects to raise numerous sun-moon tier elites. One would understand the significance of these realm pills once they compared the 5 sects to other sun-moon tier forces. Whether it was in terms of absolute number or percentage, the 5 sects all had far more sun-moon tier elites than other sun-moon tier forces. This was all thanks to the realm pills. However, following Ling Han's feat of opening the sky, their farm of realm pills had gone up in a puff. It had become a mere memory. This naturally caused the higher-ups of the 5 sects to loathe Ling Han. They viewed him as someone who had to be killed. The problem was, they had no idea where the lower realm had gone after it ascended into the immortal realm. As such, they naturally had no idea where Ling Han had gone either. That being the case, regardless of how powerful they were, there was absolutely nothing they could do. Moreover, the refinement of realm pills was far too damaging to the harmony of heaven, so only the true higher-ups and those who were sent to the small world knew of this secret. Thus, most members of the 5 sects had no idea who Ling Han was. However, after Ling Han opened the sky, the 5 sects immediately listed him as their number 1 enemy. They had commanded their disciples to gather information on his whereabouts, and it seemed like they were hell-bent on killing him, no matter where he had gone. Thus, killing intent instantly appeared on the remaining 6 people's faces when they heard that Ling Han was the person who had opened the sky. Ancestor Lu, are you sure? a white-haired elder asked. Although he looked old, his cultivation was only at the medium extreme of the sun-moon tier. However, his lifespan was shorter, so he naturally aged quicker. The others all nodded in agreement. How many years had it been since Ling Han opened the sky and arrived in the immortal realm? How could he have possibly reached the medium extreme of the sun-moon tier already? This was far too unbelievable. Had he perhaps ingested some supreme divine pill? I'm certain. It's definitely him, the middle-aged man said, his voice dripping with hate. He had seen Ling Han's divine sense before, and the aura of a cultivator's divine sense was incredibly hard to change. This middle-aged man was called Lu Shi, and he was an orphan who had been adopted and raised by the Heaven's Sword Palace. He was the 10th infant to be adopted, so he was named Lu Shi. 3 million years had now passed, and he had already grown from a small orphan to a formidable pillar of the Heaven's Sword Palace. What luck! We'll kill this brat today, then obtain a Ginseng king while we're at it, the others said with a cold smile. Obtain your mom, the old Ginseng immediately shouted. You people are still 8 million years too young to eat your grandpa Ginseng. Little Han, beat them up for me. There's no need to go easy on them. If you kill them, I'll cover for you. However, he continued to retreat as he shouted this. Just look at his thin arms and thin legs. How would he dare to face so many elites head-on? Ling Han drew his sword, and said, since we all know each other's identity, let's save the nonsensical talk. Come, let's battle. You're a mere ant. Lu Shi said in disdain. In the eyes of immortal realm elites, people from small worlds were naturally nothing more than ants. In fact, they were even lower than ants. If they didn't think this, how could they have ruthlessly refined the people of the lower realm into realm pills? Yet, an ant actually dared to challenge them right now. How impudent. The cultivation speed of this brat was indeed astounding. However, he was only at the medium extreme, so what did it matter even if he were a 5-star genius? Before the 7 of them, he most likely couldn't even withstand a single strike. Kill him. Lu Shi commanded. It was beneath him to deal with such an ant himself. Understood, the 6 people replied. They all charged at Ling Han. Meanwhile, Ling Han was itching to do battle. He had advanced to the middle stage of the medium extreme, and his battle prowess had soared to the peak stage of the high extreme. Add to that his divine demon sword, and his battle prowess was easily on par with that of elites at the early stage of the consummate level. Moreover, this was already discounting the suppressive ability of the heaven's might that he could unleash. In addition to all this, he still had a huge weapon in the misty soul-capturing flower. With Lu Shi standing back, the 6 others were like mere children before him. Ling Han swung his divine demon sword as he charged forward. Sword projections intertwined, and killing intent soared into the sky. Lu Shi's expression instantly changed. Almost everyone in the Heaven's Sword Palace used a sword as their weapon, and he was no different. He was also a sword-wielding elite. Thus, he couldn't help but feel deeply astonished upon seeing Ling Han's attack. He knew that he had severely underestimated Ling Han's strength. Hurry! Retreat, he shouted frantically. At the same time, he hurriedly dashed toward Ling Han. Lu Shi literally means Lu number 10. Chapter 1276 Tool and User Become One. Lu Shi wanted to stop Ling Han, but he was too late. How astonishing was Ling Han's speed when he was using the star-plucking step. As his sword swept part, millions of sword projections swept out. The whole space was filled with fierce flashes of sword chi. Ah! Terrible cries rang out. With that one blow, 5 of the 7 members of the Heaven's Sword Palace had fallen, and aside from Lu Shi, the last remaining person had also suffered a considerable injury. There was a very deep wound in his right ribs. Lu Shi's eyes couldn't help but widen. He was both furious and shocked. How could this brat be so terrifying? This was definitely battle prowess on the level of the consummate level, only slightly weaker than himself, was in the middle stage of the consummate level, and had not reached the true peak stage of the Sun-Moon tier yet. It was enough that he was cultivating at such a rapid pace, but more importantly, his battle prowess was still so strong. Couldn't he allow others some way to survive? How could a lowly commoner that came from a small world possibly have such natural talent, fated opportunities, and good fortune? He couldn't understand it in the slightest. The only other living person was also covered with cold sweat. Presently, he was filled with lingering fear. If it were not for the fact that he'd reacted that slight bit faster just now, he would have probably shared the fate of his 5 companions that were lying on the ground, their corpses gradually becoming cooler. Little beast, what a cruel heart you have. Lu Shi felt like his heart was bleeding. How much did the sect have to sacrifice to nurture a Sun-Moon tier disciple? Especially when they were advancing from Mountain River tier to Sun-Moon tier. That had been achieved by diluting the effects of the realm pill and distributing it to these disciples. They could only concoct a few pills every 10,000 years, and they would have to be divided equally among the 5 sects as well. After distribution, each sect would only have a single pill. And from the moment Ling Han opened the sky, even this one pill was no longer insured. Though it was not discernible yet, the 5 sects would definitely begin going downhill. Every single Sun-Moon tier disciple was incredibly precious. Ling Han brandished the divine demon sword, the sword's blade like snow, without the slightest bit of blood on it. He coldly said, "What a joke. All of you are filled with killing intent towards me, and it is only allowed that you kill me and not the other way round?" Lu Shi naturally knew that he had spoken nonsense, but what else could he say in his rage? Of course, this was also because he was used to being in a lofty position. He automatically placed himself on a high spot, and reprimanded those he deemed below himself. You have to use your blood to repay your debts. Lu Shi took in a deep breath. Though this young man was frighteningly young, his abilities were astonishing, and he had no choice but to be extremely cautious. He summoned his own god tool. It was a white jade tower, and only had 7 levels. The moment it appeared, it shone with astonishing light. It was as if he had plucked a sun out of the skies. It was incredibly blinding. Ling Han was surprised. He channeled the eye of truth, and saw it very clearly. This tower of yours contains one of your suns and moons. He had heard of the practice of using one's own self to refine the tool, but directly fusing one's sun and moon into his god tool? This was the first time he had seen something like that. Involuntarily, he became greatly interested. Was this user and tool becoming as one? Destroy this tower. Meanwhile, Small Tower transmitted a message through divine sense into his mind. It could not bear to see any tower-shaped precious tools. The moment it saw one, it would become angered. Ling Han naturally ignored it, and said, "Then I would really like to take a look." "You will," Lu Shi said. "And the price will be your life." He summoned the precious tower, which cast shadow over Ling Han. Wang, the precious tower shone, multiple rays of light descending downwards. Every ray of light was like a fiery flame, filled with a frightening destructive ability, causing even the air itself to begin burning as crackling sounds rang out. Lu Shi cultivated fire techniques, so his sun and moon was also like fiery flames. Now that they had been fused into the precious tool, lending on the might of the god tool, its might was also completely expressed. Ling Han nodded internally. From a certain aspect, the combination of user and tool was really a kind of grand move. Its might was indeed very, very powerful. However, the disadvantage was also very obvious. This sun and moon had really been severed, so it would naturally affect himself, and he was destined to be incapable of reaching a higher cultivation level. However, though it was not all the people of the 5 sects, at least 99% of them could not possibly break through to the heavenly body tier, so why would they have to mind? What they pursued was strength on the level of Sun-Moon tier. Still, though user and tool becoming one was powerful, could it compare to the divine demon sword? Ling Han sliced out towards the skies. Though it was merely one strike, the divine demon sword showed its might, and once again sent out millions of sword projections, boosting the might of this attack by who knew how many times. Pu, 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 pu. The fiery light was slashed apart, and sword chi danced unhindered, just like a ruler descending onto his territory. Humph. Lu Shi also knew that he could not possibly suppress Ling Han by merely depending on a precious tower. His body shot out, and a cold light swept past. There was a sword in his hand, and it stabbed out towards Ling Han. This sword was similarly burning with soaring fierce flames, its brightness blinding to the eye. Ling Han was shocked. This sword had shockingly also fused with a sun and moon. This guy wouldn't have fused all 4 of his suns and moons into god tools, would he? Is there any more? Ling Han asked with a smile. As he wielded his sword to parry his attacks, he was also very curious at the same time. As you wish. Lu Shi smirked coldly. Wang, he summoned another divine sword, wielding the 2 swords in both hands. Meanwhile, the precious tower moved automatically, sending down divine flames onto Ling Han, planning to refine him by force. This second sword had similarly fused with a sun and moon. Going by that account, his 3 suns and moons had been used for tool refinement, and he had not formed the 4th moon. Otherwise, he might summon a 4th god tool. Ordinarily, it was not that the more god tools there were, the better it was. That was because a cultivator had limited energy, and could not possibly allow all the god tools to show their might completely, so he might as well concentrate fully on controlling one. However, these 3 god tools of Lu Shi's had fused with a sun and moon from him. This was completely different. It was as if the god tools had become a part of his body. He needed only split up a little of his concentration to control them, and all the 3 god tools would be able to show their complete might. True enough, small sects would have their own strengths. They did not have the technique to break through to the heavenly body tier, so they used all means available to them to become stronger in the sun-moon tier. Combining themselves with their tools, and controlling 3 or even 4 god tools all at once, was indeed a very good method. Though his own battle prowess would definitely be affected, he would have the might of another 2 god tools, so he could completely compensate for his shortcoming in this manner. Lu Shi charged over, his hands holding a divine sword each. Endless flames danced. Ling Han stood solemnly, and in that instant when the other approached, he suddenly shot out the 7-kill subduing soul technique. Like an angry arrow, it shot towards Lu Shi. Woo! Even if Lu Shi had already cultivated for several million years, and had nurtured his spirit to a very strong extent, he still grunted at this blow. He felt so much agony he almost used his hands to hold on to his head. He knew that things were not good, and hurriedly stimulated the divine tower to protect him. The 7-floor treasured tower instantly enlarged many times, and descended down on his head, protecting him within it. Ding! True enough, when Ling Han's slash reached, it sliced into the treasured tower, causing the body of the tower to shake madly. A few pieces of scrap metal had even been sliced off, but this blow was still blocked in the end. After all, he was an old monster that had lived for more than 3 million years, so his battle experience was really too bountiful. Ling Han did not strike further. Instead, he focused on the remaining person from the Heaven's Sword Palace. Chapter 1277 Identity Really Revealed. Lu Shi was guarded by the precious tower, and Ling Han wouldn't be able to slice through it in the short term, so there was naturally no need for him to waste time. Do you have some strange, bizarre god tools? Ling Han sized up the other person from the Heaven's Sword Palace curiously. The man was already scared out of his wits. He had initially thought that with Lu Shi, they would be able to easily take Ling Han down, but the result was far, far out of his expectations. Lu Shi was actually forced so far by Ling Han that he could only protect himself, and he had now become Ling Han's target instead. In this moment, his cold sweat dripped like rain. He felt that his legs were weak, and as if he couldn't even stand steady anymore. The combining of user and tool was a secret technique that belonged exclusively to the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. Only after they had broken through to this cultivation level would they be taught the technique by the sect. Thus, he could not produce any powerful god tool. Even if he could, his cultivation level was still too low. What qualified him to stand against Ling Han? You dare! Lu Shi's voice rang out from within the previous tower. Two divine swords shot out of his hands, slicing out towards Ling Han. Ling Han brandished his own sword to parry, and shot out multiple flashes of sword chi, completely dispersing Lu Shi's attack. However, the other person from the Heaven's Sword Palace also took advantage of the opening to flee. He was really scared out of his wits, his legs flying madly. He only hated the fact that he did not have a few more legs, and could not flee fast enough. Can you flee? Ling Han shook his head. He used the annihilating dragon star arrow. Xiao, an arrow swept out quickly like a flash of light, and soon caught up to that person. Pooh, the arrow had pierced through the man's chest, forcibly tearing that person into two. However, the vitality of Sun-Moon tier cultivators was really too strong. They would not die even if their bodies had been separated in half. The hands crawled, the legs jumped, and the two halves of the body would join back into one. Connected with origin power, and nurtured for a few years, who knew, maybe they would be a new man again. So troublesome. Ling Han drew the bow once more. Don't even think about it. Lu Shi roared. He stimulated the precious tower to cast a shadow over Ling Han. Ling Han changed the direction of the arrow, and shot out at Lu Shi. Xiao, the arrow of origin power was so fast that even elites of the Sun-Moon tier would find it difficult to grasp its course. Pooh! This arrow shot into Lu Shi's left shoulder. If it were not for the fact that he managed to dodge a bit in the nick of time, this arrow definitely would have penetrated his heart. Then, even if he had not died, he would have been severely wounded. Lu Shi paled in shock. How could this arrow be so fast? Moreover, it was so powerful that even his defensive origin power could not block the attack. Though he still had a great many ultimate techniques he had yet to use, he had now lost all of his fighting spirit. This young man made him feel a pressure as if there was no way for him to oppose him. He had a feeling of foreboding in his heart, and that was even if the strongest elites of the sect moved, they might not be able to take this young man down. However, even if one could not, then what about two? Or three? Even if they were immortals, their power was limited. Once that limit had been exceeded, then they would still die, no matter how strong they were. He had already decided. He would immediately make a report about Ling Han having arrived to the Cloud Apex planet, and send out the Heaven's Sword Palaces. No, send out all the elites of the 5 sects to besiege Ling Han and kill him. Otherwise, with the freakish pace of improvement that this brat had, it probably wouldn't take as much as a few years, and he would be on equal levels with the 5 sects. By then, it would be eternally impossible for them to suppress the latter. He was also a decisive person. Immediately, he gritted his teeth, turned around, and left. The precious tower spun lightly, sending down multiple streaks of flames, and forming a powerful shield for him. Ancestor Lu! Ancestor Lu! The remaining person from the Heaven's Sword Palace called out desperately. He had forcefully joined his body back together, but he should be given at least 15 minutes time to recover. Only then would he be able to forcibly use his origin power to piece his body back together again and recover his ability to move. But now that Lu Shi had abandoned him, this meant that he would be absolutely alone without any help. And you guys wanted to eat Grandpa Ginseng, just eat my precious ginseng foot. The old ginseng was beginning to act up again. The powerful enemy had fled, and the only one left behind was close to dying. Naturally, he was now fearless, and rushed up to deliver a series of kicks. That person was in the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. In his prime condition, he could suppress the old ginseng single-handedly, but now, he could only be kicked madly by the old ginseng. Only a few kicks later, he was already pouring out blood like mad as he had been directly kicked to death by the old ginseng. Fuck, Grandpa Ginseng is too awesome. Just broke through to the Sun-Moon tier, and I have already killed a powerful enemy in the consummate level. The old Ginseng was very confident in himself. I have to celebrate this with 100-year-old undergarment. Indeed, he drew out a pink undergarment, and breathed in heavily, his expression intoxicated. Pervert. Ling Han and Rabbit shot out a foot at the same time, sending the old Ginseng flying. However, Lu Shi had fled. Ling Han thought for a moment, and then gave up the idea of chasing after him. That precious tower god tool of his had very strong defenses, and even if he used the divine demon sword, he would need a very long period of time to penetrate through it. However, Lu Shi was not about to stay there and wait for him to break through the defenses. This place was not too far off from Wolffang City, after all. This is good too. I'll pull the snake from its hole, and have them come besiege me. I'll take advantage of the chance to kill a few more, Ling Han thought. It still had yet to be determined who was the hunter and who was the prey. At present, my abilities would advancing by leaps and bounds every 3 months. In another half a year, I will truly be confident that I will be able to kill even those at the peak stage of the consummate level with my sword. If he now stood against the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, he could only depend on the misty soul capturing flower to restrain them. But as his cultivation level became higher and higher, then he could kill his enemies with his own power. This also corresponded with Ling Han's Tao, and that was pursuing his own personal strength. I'll switch to another place. Who knows, I may be able to pick up a few realm spirit stones. I have come by opening the sky, so I have been boosted with the good fortune from the heaven and earth. My luck is much better than any other person's. To Ling Han, the origin power that he had accumulated from cultivation could not possibly compare to taking the berserk blood spirit pills. Thus, this was purely a waste of time. He would simply concoct some alchemical pills, then roam around in this spacious 2-realm battlefield, kill a few beings of the netherworld to earn merit points, and see if he could pick up a few realm spirit stones while he was at it. His luck was really quite good. He actually managed to pick up a few realm spirit stones, but they were only the size of his little finger. Their value could not even compare to 1% of the value of that large realm spirit stone. There will be a time when I finish my luck, he murmured ruefully. On the other side, after Lu Shi went back to Wolffang City, he gathered the people from the Heaven's Sword Palace to prevent them from encountering Ling Han and then being eliminated one by one. He communicated with the Heaven's Sword Palace at the same time to report the matter of Ling Han. He stressed many times that they could not underestimate Ling Han just because he had come from a small world and had only cultivated for a few decades. This enemy, they had to use their full efforts to deal with him. Otherwise, if he was allowed to mature and grow, he would become a calamity to the Heaven's Sword Palace. After receiving this report, a fierce debate first rose up in the Heaven's Sword sect. One portion expressed their agreement with Lu Shi's opinion, and wanted to join up with the other 5 sects to hunt Ling Han down together. There was another portion though that thought Lu Shi had exaggerated the matter. Not even 10 years had passed since Ling Han opened the sky until now, and he already possessed enough power to become a threat to the 5 sects. What a joke. 10 years' time was not even enough time for an immortal level cultivator to have the slightest improvement in his cultivation level. And what about Ling Han? Not counting the time he had taken to advance from the Shattering Void tier to immortal level, he had already raced all the way up to the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. Finally, it still alerted a person of authority who had been in seclusion for a very long time. He decisively suppressed the argument of both sides, and commanded the Heaven's Sword Palace to immediately summon the other 4 sections. They would send out all their elites to besiege Ling Han and kill him. Without considering anything else, merely for Ling Han's sin of opening the sky, he was intent on killing this man. Chapter 1278 All elites move out, hunt down Ling Han. The higher-ups of the 5 sects sat together, discussing how they should deal with Ling Han. 5 Sun-Moon tier-level forces, or perhaps among the top 5 greatest sects in this echelon, were actually joining forces to hunt down an ant from a small world who was only in the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. In the past, this would have been unimaginable to them. But now, they were all thinking they had to eliminate him. That damn brat must have gotten some great fated opportunity to be capable of opening the sky previously. Otherwise, he could not have risen up in a short 20 years' time. This has broken the laws of the cultivation world. That's right. He managed to accommodate the power of the nation of the whole lower realm. This would have a frightening requirement for his physique. He must have gotten a precious treasure in the lower realm, and only then did he manage to advance so quickly even in the immortal realm. The lower realm is not so simple. At least, the 12 military officers subordinate to the Heavenly River King all entered this small world, and left behind their supreme inheritance. Unfortunately, the small world suppressed our power. We could not forcefully open the 12 palaces even if we entered. Perhaps, this brat has obtained the inheritance of the Heavenly River King. Gasp. The members of the 5 sects could no longer stay calm. Who was the Heavenly River King? In truth, they weren't very clear either. They only knew that this was an incredibly powerful existence. Actually, even the 12 military officers were powerful and invincible. If they could obtain the inheritance of the Heavenly River King, no, even if it was just the inheritance of the 12 military officers, then they would at least be capable of matching Eternal River Tier, wouldn't they? Who would be willing to accept inferiority? Especially in the case of cultivators, all of them had their own pride. We must apprehend that damn brat. Since he seeks his own demise from so far away, how can we not oblige? Send out all the elites. The 5 sects soon reached an agreement, which was to mobilize all the elites in their sections. Furthermore, to prevent one of the other sects from keeping the treasures to themselves, every team in search of Ling Han was a mix of people from all 5 sects. Each sect would send out 2 people, and small teams comprised of 10 members were thus born. Of course, even if it was the 5 sects, they still had a limited number of Sun-Moon tier elites. Although sending out so many people into the vast 2-realm battlefield was not equivalent to a drop of water entering the ocean, in truth there was not much difference from that. Moreover, considering the fact that Ling Han would occasionally enter into the Black Tower to concoct alchemical pills, the chances of them successfully finding Ling Han dropped considerably. In truth, Ling Han had no plans of hiding. He very boldly searched for both his enemies and realm spirit stones in the 2-realm battlefield, yet still did not encounter anyone from the 5 sects, so what could he do? When it looked like 3 months were about to pass, Ling Han was both expectant and anxious. Very soon, he would be able to take the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill to improve his power, but before that, he had to first burn himself in the immortal flame. Just the thought of that caused a muscle to twitch in his cheek. Ding, ding, ding. Sounds of battle could be heard ahead of him. Ling Han was not the nosy type, but this was the 2-realm battlefield. What if it was a battle between beings of the netherworld and cultivators of the immortal realm? He immediately rushed forwards, but when he saw both sides of the battle, he couldn't help but shake his head. This was not a conflict between the immortal realm and the netherworld. Instead, both sides were human. Obviously, this was either a battle of vengeance or a fight for profit. And in the case of profit, it would be even simpler. A realm spirit stone should have appeared here, which caused a conflict to rise up between the 2 sides. However, both sides were very strong as they were on the level of the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. Way they saw Ling Han suddenly appear, both sides paused slightly. However, when they realized that Ling Han was all alone, and his cultivation level was only in the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, naturally no one would care about him. They continued the battle once more. Stop. Stop. However, only after a few moves, one of the 2 sides suddenly called a halt. Humph, you were the ones who picked the fight, now what do you want to do? The other side asked. The person who called a halt said, we'll let you have that realm spirit stone. This shocked the other side. To be honest, they were at a disadvantage here. Yet if the other side wanted to eliminate all of them, they would also have to pay a heavy price. Thus, the other side was planning on wearing them down until their side lost all their fighting spirit and took the initiative to hand over the realm's spirit stone in exchange for a chance to flee all this while. But they had never thought that the other side would actually stop the battle at this time. They retreated, and saw the other side did not move. After carefully running far enough into distance, they hurriedly ran with their full strength, and very soon disappeared. He, this is really traveling far and wide to look for you, only to find you easily. You actually delivered yourself right to our doorstep, a middle-aged man who had a sword on his back said calmly, his eyes fixed on Ling Han, exuding a powerful coldness from his gaze. The intelligence is indeed accurate. Medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, a middle-aged woman continued. Brat, kneel and accept your death. We can give you a quick end. This was an old woman. Her figure was humped, and she held a walking stick in her hand. Ling Han broke into a grin, and said, "What a coincidence. I was just thinking of looking for you guys." He saw the sign of the Heaven's Sword Palace on the two people's sleeves, and out of the remaining 8, every 2 people had the same sign. Very easily, he deduced that they came respectively from the Cloud Phoenix sect, Absolute Saber sect, Blue Thunder sect, and Earth Dragon sect. Humph, I have always wanted to see how this brat that opened the sky looked like. Has he actually eaten the liver of a true dragon or the heart of a true phoenix to actually be so outrageously bold? The old woman raised the walking stick, and then suddenly sent it down in a series of knocks. Caw, caw, caw. Suddenly, a crack appeared on the ground's surface, and quickly stretched out towards Ling Han. And just as the ground cracked open, there actually appeared endless darkness underground, which formed multiple snake-like creatures. They weren't snakes but earth dragons, or rather earthworms. Disgusting. Ling Han humphed, and sent out his sword in a slash. Millions of sword projections swept out, and these earthworms were all severed into pieces, once again turning into shadows. At this strike, all 10 members of the 5 sects looked shocked. Though the old woman had not used her full power, Ling Han was still very carefree and relaxed, not revealing his true abilities either. This young man could not be underestimated. Please hold the lines for me, everyone. Don't let this junior flee, and wait until I take him down. The sword-bearing man took 1 step forwards. Suddenly, sword intent set out, the sharp chi cutting right through the air itself. He was an elite from the Heaven's Sword Palace. Sword cultivators indeed possessed frightening destructive ability. Among the 5 sects, whether it was the Earth Dragon sect, the Cloud Phoenix sect, or the Blue Thunder sect, they were actually not pure humans, but rather half-human, which meant that they were the descendants born from the union of divine beast and human. They were stronger than ordinary immortals, especially when they awakened their bloodline. They weren't just a little bit stronger at that time. For example, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden had reached the consummate level of the sun-moon tier only after 10,000 years since entering into the immortal realm. Unfortunately, it was limited to the level of the 5 sects. They did not have any cultivation technique to allow them to advance 1 step further, and could only remain on the consummate level. If they did not get any special encounter, they would remain on this level for the rest of their lives. However, the Heaven's Sword Palace could stand as an equal with these 3 sects, and from one aspect, it proved how strong sword cultivators were since they could compensate for their shortcoming of the lack of bloodline. Furthermore, this elite had reached the peak stage of the consummate level of the sun-moon tier. Merely aiming the tip of his blade at Ling Han, he made Ling Han feel as if his skin was about to tear. His sword intent was truly frightening. Too strong. Chapter 1279 Escape and Counterkill. Cultivation level was not equivalent to battle prowess. Ling Han was sure that this man that was pointing his sword at him had to be a 3-star genius at least, or even a 4-star genius. At present, he was definitely incapable of matching this kind of elite. In truth, his battle prowess had only reached the peak stage of the high extreme of the sun-moon tier, and taking into consideration that Heaven's Might had weakened the other by a sub-minor level, he could only match an opponent in the early stage of the consummate level. Of course, if the Misty Soul capturing flower was effective, that would be another story. However, in a head-on clash, Ling Han did not doubt in the slightest that he would be slashed into halves by the other party. Never doubt the destructive ability of a sword cultivator. Ling Han's present physique was only slightly above level 7 godly metal, and had not reached the extent of level 8 yet. And even if he had reached level 8, if the other's battle prowess could really surpass 3 to 4 stars, he would still be capable of considerable destructiveness against level 8 godly metal. Ling Han directly drew out the Misty Soul capturing flower. Instantly, the spirits of the 10 people on the scene were all captured, but it was only a mere instant. The 4 elites from the Heaven's Sword Palace and the Absolute Saber sect all had clear eyes. Those that had cultivated Sword Heart, Saber Heart, and had reached the illumination level all had sturdy spirits. It was much too difficult to affect their spirit. This was also why sword and saber cultivators were so troublesome. They lived only for killing, and had long since severed their other emotions, so it was very difficult to move their spirit. Of course, this was also because these 4 people had cultivation levels high enough. Otherwise, the Misty Soul capturing flower would still have effect on them. Die. A sword slashed over. 4 suns and moons all shone with bright light, creating a frightening power. Fuck. When he saw that the Misty Soul capturing flower was ineffective, Ling Han knew that things were not good. He quickly put away the demonic flower, and began to break out of the siege using the star-plucking step. Where are you going? The remaining 3 people from the Absolute Saber sect and Heaven's Sword Palace all brandished their weapons in a strike at the same time, and the remaining 6 people all returned to their senses after the Misty Soul capturing flower had been put away. They all paled drastically, and began their respective attacks as well. This brat actually had this kind of unusual item on him. If it were not for the fact that they had 4 companions who had cultivated Sword Heart and Saber Heart, they would probably have fallen for this trick. Who knew, they might have even died here. The moment they thought that they could have possibly died so carelessly in the hands of a junior, they all flew into rage out of humiliation, wanting nothing more but to tear Ling Han into a million pieces. Ling Han did not zealously continue fighting, and instead put his all into breaking out of the siege. Can you leave? The 10 great elites all humphed coldly. The weakest among them was in the early stage of the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, and if the 10 of them joined forces, it was enough to kill any cultivator in the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, what more when he was just in the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. Hong, various attacks intertwined, incredibly dazzling with their brightness. Peng, peng, peng. Ling Han was repeatedly hit, but after he forcefully took a few heavy blows, he finally tore through the siege, and successfully escaped. There were quite a few bloody holes in his body, but he was still indifferent, and said, "I will remember this debt. I will seek out each of you for repayment in future." The 10 people from the 5 sects were all astonished. He was still alive even after all. Fuck that. If it had been them, they would definitely have died with any one of those attacks, yet a medium extreme cultivator actually survived, and still managed to threaten them coldly. A coldness rose up in their hearts. This brat definitely could not be left alive. You will only die here today, so what future would you still have? The 10 people moved, determined to kill Ling Han. This was not just for eliminating a future powerful foe, but also for the great secret that Ling Han possessed. They would absolutely not believe that a lowly commoner from a small world could reach this step just with his own merits. He must have hidden some astonishing fated opportunity. Who knew, it might really be the inheritance of the Heavenly River King. Ling Han humphed, and used the star-plucking step, running with all his might. The 10 members of the 5 sects hurriedly pursued, but the moment they started the pursuit, they realized they actually could not catch up with Ling Han. Not only were they unable to catch up to him, the distance was still continuously increasing. Such a fast movement technique definitely cannot be used for long. Give chase, we must eliminate this disaster. If we do not get rid of this brat, we will not be able to rest or eat in peace. Yet Ling Han very soon disappeared without a trace. The 10 people were helpless, and could only separate to search for him. After Ling Han had escaped, he had already hidden in the Black Tower. He did not enter into the Black Tower at the first instant, firstly because he did not want to reveal the secret of the Black Tower, and secondly because he did not want to depend too much on the Black Tower, hiding inside the moment he met with danger. He channeled a drop of indestructible true fluid, and the injuries of his body immediately recovered at a visible pace. In truth, he was very seriously wounded. Those were 10 elites at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, and a few of them had not just reached the peak stage of the consummate level, but were even 3-star geniuses and 4-star geniuses. One blow from them, and his blood and flesh was sent flying, even his godly bones had almost been broken by the attacks. He rubbed his neck. That elite from the Heaven's Sword Palace almost severed his head with a single strike. With the use of the indestructible true fluid, the injury had already recovered, but Ling Han still felt lingering fear. If it were not for the fact that his godly bones were strong enough, his head would definitely have been separated from his body by now. He was in the Black Tower, but his vision was not affected. He discovered that there was a person running towards him, and it was precisely that old woman from the Earth Dragon sect. Even though she was holding a walking stick, her speed was incredibly fast. It was as if she could shrink the distance, covering more than 300 meters with a single step. She was alone. Ling Han smirked coldly. Just right, he had suffered such a heavy loss, so he was just thinking of venting his ire on someone. The old woman suddenly stopped. She had the bloodline of the Earth Dragon, and was very sensitive to smells. She could vaguely smell Ling Han's scent, but when she reached this place, it had suddenly vanished. How strange, could it be that he had tunneled into the ground? She released a battle cry, wanting to summon her other companions. However, just at this moment, a sword light suddenly flashed, bringing with it endless killing intent and slashing down at her neck. What? The old woman was incredibly astonished. There was obviously not one person in this place, so where did this sword light come from? She forcibly brandished her walking stick to meet the incoming sword light, and when she turned, she saw that this sword was held in the hand of a young man. It was Ling Han. She was stunned and furious. She had not thought that not only had Ling Han not fled in defeat, he actually dared to hide here to ambush her. Yet his methods of concealing himself were really too good. Even she had not found him, and at this time, she was concentrating fully on sensing Ling Han's disappeared aura, so this could be considered a time when her defenses were the lowest. This strike was earth-shattering, a major disaster so frightening it was indescribable. Pung! Her walking stick still parried the sword strike, but because she had moved in a hurry, her power was inadequate. Instantly, this strike sent her walking stick flying. However, she also managed to gain some time, her figure hurriedly retreating. Ling Han approached. Because the two of them were too near to each other, he did not have the space to brandish his sword. He simply allowed the divine demon sword to leave his hand and automatically attack, while he shot out his fists in a series of punches at the old woman. The old woman was desperate to stay alive, and shielded herself with her arms as she hurriedly retreated. She absolutely did not have the time to wonder why Ling Han, who had just been severely wounded, could look like he was completely unharmed in an instant. At this time, the battle cry echoed out endlessly, and the other 9 people were also rapidly rushing over. The old woman was elated. As long as she could hold on for just a little bit longer, when her reinforcements reached, the attacking and defending positions would switch, and it would be Ling Han's turn to try to escape with all his might. You will not have the chance. Ling Han smirked coldly, and the misty soul-capturing flower suddenly appeared. The old woman was shocked, and hurriedly wanted to close her eyes. However, this demonic flower had direct effect on the divine sense, so there was absolutely no difference whether you closed your eyes or not. In the instant she closed her eyes, she saw 9 figures rushing towards her from various directions. However, this was also the last scene that she would see in her life. Pung! Ling Han smashed the old woman's head with a single punch, and even her spirit was destroyed as well. He looked coldly at the remaining 9 people from the 5 sects, and used a motion technique to sprint madly without the slightest hesitation, endlessly stretching out the distance between himself and the other 9 people in an instant. Chapter 1280 High Bounty. When the other 9 members of the 5 sects ran to the old woman, they all stopped. Each of their faces was covered with ice, with a sliver of indescribable coldness. The 10 of them had joined forces, and Ling Han still managed to flee. Not only had he successfully fled, he had taken advantage of the time when they had separated to pursue him, and turned the tables around to kill one of them. It should be known that Ling Han previously had been severely wounded. What a frightening physique, what frightening recovery ability, what frightening schemes, and what frightening decisiveness. Faced with this kind of enemy, all 9 felt their hearts grow heavy. This brat has to be gotten rid of as soon as possible. That's right, or we will all have a tragic end. The 9 of them looked at the old woman's body, whose head had been smashed, and felt their hearts shudder. They felt sympathy that came from seeing a peer killed in this way. This kind of thing could possibly happen to them as well. Even the 4 people from the Heaven's Sword Palace and Absolute Saber sect, who had cultivated sword heart and saber heart and severed their other emotions, unmoved by external factors, could feel a full body shiver. That was because Ling Han did not only possess the misty soul capturing flower, but his abilities on their own were even more amazing. Perhaps Ling Han would have the strength to overthrow the 5 sects in another 100 years. To Sun Moon Tears, 100 years' time was really much too fast, and it was completely impossible that there would appear a genius that could save them from their desperate crisis in the 5 sects in this little bit of time. The time given was much too short. This was the scary thing about top-grade prodigies. 100 years might only seem like a blink of an eye to you, wherein nothing would change, but for a prodigy, it was enough time for an explosive improvement to appear in their strength. Spare no expense, find this brat and kill him. All 9 forced out through gritted teeth. It was no longer a matter of pride, and not about how they could snatch away his fated opportunity after they killed him. It had become a problem of their own survival. There was no one who would be willing to wait for death, especially in the case of elites like them. They would definitely counterattack madly. After Ling Han ran a distance away, he once again entered into the Black Tower. He was very pleased with himself. Despite being ganged up on by 10 elites, he still managed to get rid of one. However, this was done with the help of the misty soul capturing flower. I myself am still not strong enough. Ling Han very soon suppressed his self-satisfaction, and reflected on himself. 3 months' time is almost up again. Small Tower appeared, and informed Ling Han that he could enter into the immortal flame cauldron to temper himself again. Ling Han shivered, yet still stood up without hesitation. Running in a panic due to being hunted down by the 5 sects caused him to be even more determined to pursue true strength. He threw himself into the cauldron to be tempered by the immortal flame. 3 days later, Ling Han came out of the cauldron. Naturally, he was still an infant, but looked to be about 10 months old. Allow me to correct. If you can maintain this kind of rate of improvement, you will be able to completely grasp rising from the ashes after about 100 more times, Small Tower said. That was right. A few hundred times dropped to 100 times could be considered a massive improvement. Yet Ling Han's expression was still dark. He had to go through this 100 times to be able to complete tempering his body with immortal flame. Just the thought of it made him nauseous. But he had just tempered his body with the immortal flame, so he forced himself not to think about it. Ling Han drew out the Berserk Blood Spirit pill and ate it. This was his main motive in agreeing to temper his body with the immortal flame. He needed more power. Under the reincarnation tree, 3 days were equivalent to 3 years. Ling Han stood up. His cultivation level had progressed 1 step further and reached the late stage of the medium extreme, while his battle prowess had soared up to the early stage of the consummate level. Added with the help of Heaven's might and the divine demon sword, he could even fight someone in the late stage of the consummate level. However, I will still be a bit weak against an opponent in the peak stage of the consummate level, What more when the 5 sects still have elites whose battle prowess surpasses the peak stage, and their number is very astonishing as well. Ling Han was not self-satisfied. If his cultivation level could advance into the consummate level, then he would truly be capable of looking down on the 5 sects. I'll use the trash from the 5 sects to test out my battle prowess. Ling Han left the Black Tower, and took the initiative to make trouble with the 5 sects. The moment he appeared, he found out that the 5 sects had really spared no expense to look for him now. Anyone from Wolf-Fang City received a bounty notice. If they found Ling Han, and revealed his location to the 5 sects, they would be given a realm spirit stone as reward. Though Wolf-Fang City had a law that stated that immortals were not allowed to have internecine strife, the 5 sects were only looking for Ling Han, and did not state that they wanted to do anything to Ling Han, though everyone knew that it definitely would not be anything good. Though the 2-realm battlefield was huge, there were also many people. Soon, someone discovered Ling Han's whereabouts and passed the information to the 5 sects, and the members of the 5 sects immediately charged over. After a bloody battle, Ling Han successfully broke through the siege. Though he suffered serious injuries, he also took the lives of 2 elites in the early stage of the consummate level of the other side, showing his character trait of being unwilling to take a loss in the slightest. This battle brought fear to the 5 sects because they discovered much to their shock that Ling Han had become even stronger. Only a mere few months had passed, and Ling Han's power had actually improved so apparently. This was too astonishing. The 5 sects had gone crazy, and began to search for Ling Han even more urgently, willing to spare no expense to destroy Ling Han. If it was not because they could not pay the price, they even wanted to ask heavenly body tier elites to move, and that would ensure their success. However, Ling Han went to the camp of the Purple Moon Army. He had not seen the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden for a long time, and the latter had to know that the 5 sects were currently targeting him. He had to meet the beauty at least once and reassure her. Holding the token, Ling Han entered into the Purple Moon Army. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was just worrying about him, and had just completed a huge mission with the army. Thus, she decided to ask for a few days of leave, and planned to have a good reunion with Ling Han. Ling Han was naturally greatly pleased. Unfortunately, he had still not completely grasped rising from the ashes at this moment, so his true physique was only as big as a baby of 10 months old. He did not even have the ability to push her down, or have her push him down instead, so he could only be like a eunuch who made a trip to the brothel, unable to do anything. The couple shared a sweet time, and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was extremely stunned by Ling Han's rate of advancement. She knew that Ling Han was the Alchemy Emperor, but he could not have been as fast as this even with divine pills. Come, I'll show you something good. Ling Han brought the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden into the Black Tower, and showed her the reincarnation tree as well as that saint that could no longer be considered a saint. However, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was still extremely stunned. What kind of good fortune had actually befallen on Ling Han that even the incomplete spirit of a saint was staying inside his spatial god tool? In comparison, the fact that Ling Han possessed a spatial god tool seemed to be insignificant because saints could forge spatial god tools. When I break through to the heavenly body tier, I can go into seclusion here. But as for now, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden shook her head. Her breakthrough was different as she needed to accumulate the power of her bloodline. This was something that the reincarnation tree could not help with. The couple talked for a while longer before finally coming out of the Black Tower. Ling Han started a fire, and began barbecuing some precious ingredients. He added the godly medicine from the Black Tower as well as a beard of ginseng from the old ginseng. The old ginseng had plucked it from himself after he advanced into the Sun-Moon tier, so it was really extremely nutritious. However, to extract all the nutritious essence from this pot of ingredients required a very, very long time. After about 2 days, an extraordinary aroma wafted, and could be smelled in a 10 miles radius. Ling Han had just ladled out a bowl of soup for the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden when a small beast popped out from who knew where, drooling as it stared at that bowl of soup. So adorable. Instantly, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's eyes lit up. Probably a root hair. Chapter 1281 Little Beast and Little Bird. Ling Han's eyes swept over it, and a sliver of killing intent immediately seeped into his gaze. This was a creature of the netherworld. Yet he did not make a move. This little beast had just crossed over into the immortal level, and its power was extremely weak. Furthermore, it did not seem to have awakened its intelligence. Otherwise, it was absolutely impossible that it would still approach upon spotting two obviously human elites of the Sun-Moon tier. This small beast looked like a cat, covered all over with snow-white fur, soft, bright, and shining with a silvery light. That appearance belonged to the category that one would immediately like it upon a single look. No wonder the heavenly phoenix divine maiden couldn't help but exclaim in surprise even with her cool, aloof personality. "Joe! Joe!" The little beast called out towards the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, its drool dripping even more quickly. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden looked towards Ling Han, and said, "Give it a share as well." "Did you not see that it is a creature of the netherworld?" Ling Han asked. "Still, it is so cute." The heavenly phoenix divine maiden could not resist at all. The little beast released a soft cry, so adorable. Ling Han sighed, and could only draw out a bowl to ladle out a share for this little beast. Then, he placed it over, and said, "Little guy, finish this and run off quickly. A glutton like you should obediently stay in the netherworld. If you came to the immortal realm, wouldn't you just be filling someone's stomach?" Little beast immediately began to flick out its tongue to drink the soup. Perhaps it was too delicious, but its head poked in further and further. In the end, it lost its balance, and both its hind legs were sticking upwards. Ling Han was surprised. Even eating, and it still had to act cute, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden would probably be rendered completely incapable of resisting. He turned his head, and true enough, the sympathy in the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's eyes was practically overflowing. The little beast drank very quickly. Being capable of cultivating to the mountain river tier, how could it have no intelligence? Immediately, it chirped out at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden as if it knew that only begging her would be useful. Indeed, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden turned her eyes towards Ling Han, filled with plea. Ling Han sighed, and could only ladle out another bowl. One bowl followed another. This little beast's appetite was quite amazing. Ling Han couldn't help but be moved. It should be known that he used proper ingredients in consideration of the cultivation levels of both himself and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. If it was given to a mountain river tier, they could still eat, but they definitely wouldn't be able to eat too much. Eating so vigorously like the little beast, they would definitely explode from all the richness. But the fact was that this little beast was still very energetic, playing cute and acting coy. There was absolutely no sign that it was about to explode anytime soon. Strange. After this little beast had single-handedly finished off half the meat stew, it was finally satisfied. It ran to the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, and happily wagged its tail, playing cute right to the very end. Meanwhile, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden was feeling extremely compassionate, and picked up the little beast, combing through its fur. She even gave it a massage, infuriating Ling Han. He had never seen this fierce woman treat him so gently before. Little beast seemed to sense Ling Han's unfriendly gaze, and curled in its claws, ducking into heavenly phoenix divine maiden's arms. "Don't scare it," the heavenly phoenix divine maiden warned Ling Han. "I give it food, I give it drink, and now it's even snatching away my wife?" Ling Han glared at the little beast, but the little beast showed no weakness at all. It glared back at Ling Han while using its small head to rub against the heavenly phoenix divine maiden all the while. Obviously, it knew whose favor it should gain. "Little monster from the netherworld will be eaten sooner or later." Ling Han threatened fiercely. "Joe, Joe." The little beast acted spoiled while looking like it had got a terrible scare. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden once again warned Ling Han seriously, causing him to feel very rueful. He had to quickly increase his cultivation level, or even his wife would be climbing over his head. Just at this moment, a soft cracking sound was heard. Ling Han involuntarily turned his eyes towards that egg that he had kept for who knew how long. Now, as long as he was free, he would take it out for some sunbathing, and that sound had originated from the eggshell. There was a crack. Ka, another sound rang out, and the first crack appeared. Ling Han was greatly pleased. Was this guy finally about to hatch? This was the descendant of the Azure Flame Vulture, and in truth was not of much help to Ling Han by now. However, he had nurtured it by his side for so many days, so he was still very expectant to see a new life break out of its egg. Knock, knock, knock. The Azure Flame Vulture inside pecked continuously, and the egg shell broke gradually. Finally, the head of a small bird stretched out. This time, it did not continue to peck, but rather opened its beak and began to eat the egg shell. Soon, it chewed out a large round hole. This egg shell seemed to be extremely delicious because while the little bird had already eaten out a hole big enough for it to come out, it did not look like it had the slightest intention to stop at all. It was still there eating continuously, causing Ling Han to feel a slight urge to break off a piece to have a taste as well. As a glutton, he felt a heavy pressure. Ling Han, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, and the little beast were all staring. Only when the little bird had completely chewed up the egg shell so that not one bit was left did it earnestly stand up on its small legs and look at the surroundings blankly. At first, it tilted its head to look at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden for a while, and then stared at the little beast. Finally, it turned its eyes towards Ling Han, raced towards him on its two little legs, leaned against his leg, and crouched down to rest. Did it think that he was its mommy? Hey, hey, hey. Putting aside the fact that he was male, what part of him looked like a bird? Fuck, what was wrong with its eyes? Meanwhile, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden was thrown over in laughter. This would be the best material to tease Ling Han about in future, and she could talk about it for the rest of her life. Ling Han shook his head, and sent the little bird into the Black Tower. He keenly sensed that this Azure Flame Vulture would far surpass its mother in the future. It was said that the Azure Flame Vulture had a sliver of the bloodline from the ancient divine beast, Azure Phoenix. If it could awaken its bloodline, this little bird would be very useful. Lady Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. An exclamation of surprise was heard, and a few people walked over. They were all looking at the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, a burning admiration on their faces. They were disciples of the 5 sects. In the 5 sects, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was definitely a legendary character. She had only been in the immortal realm for 10,000 years, and had already reached the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier already. She was the idol of who knew how many people. However, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had long since began to live in seclusion, and only left behind a stunning legend. Thus, these people were naturally excited at being able to see the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden in this place. But when they spotted the other person next to their idol, all their expressions shifted drastically. Ling Han. He was a monster. In a short few months, there was already a considerable number of elites from their sects that had died in Ling Han's hands, and this man was also a criminal that had opened the sky. According to the 5 sects theory, the lower realm was a small world that they had operated for a few million years, producing very astonishing wealth, yet because of Ling Han, all that was now gone forever. Thus, whether they knew the truth or otherwise, all disciples of the 5 sects hated Ling Han very much. Lady Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, this person is Ling Han. He is very dangerous, leave him quickly, someone called out to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, fearing that she still did not know Ling Han's true face, and would be wounded if Ling Han went berserk. Yet the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden calmly said, I have long since severed my ties with the Cloud Phoenix sect, and all the matters of the 5 sects are no longer any concern of mine. She had long since repaid the kindness that the Cloud Phoenix sect had shown teaching her, and when the sect had sold her off to Xie Donglai, that little bit of remaining kinship she had with the Cloud Phoenix sect had vanished. Those disciples of the 5 sects were stunned and furious. What exactly had Ling Han drugged the Heavenly Phoenix Maiden with that she now did not even recognize her own sect? You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.